The baby wouldn't stop crying. Zara shifted 8-month-old Arya to her other hip, bouncing gently as she juggled her boarding pass, diaper bag, and what little remained of her sanity. The Seattle airport terminal buzzed with delayed passengers, but all she could hear was Arya's piercing wails echoing off the glass walls. "Shoo, baby girl," she whispered, exhaustion making her voice shake. "Just a few more hours. We're almost free." Free. The word tasted foreign on her tongue after 23 years of pack control, of being told when to eat, when to sleep, when to breathe. But freedom came with a price. Every dollar she'd scraped together from working 3 jobs, every sleepless night planning their escape, every moment of the past 36 hours when she'd forced herself to stay awake and keep moving. The gate attendant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Final boarding call for flight 447 to Denver." Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. Once they boarded that plane, there would be no going back. Alpha Marcus would never forgive her for running, for taking what he considered his property. But she'd rather die than let him sell her to the highest bidder. She stumbled toward the gate, Arya's cries growing louder. The few remaining passengers shot her annoyed glances, but she kept her head down. In a few hours, they'd be in Denver. In a few hours, she'd figure out their next move. The plane was nearly empty, a blessing from the storm delays that had scattered travelers across the country. Zara found her seat in the middle section, grateful for the space to spread out. Maybe she could finally get some rest. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, smooth, and sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. She looked up to find a man settling into the seat beside her, despite the dozen empty rows available. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and eyes the color of whiskey. Alpha. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. His scent wrapped around her, expensive cologne mixed with something indefinably dangerous that made her Omega instinct scream both warning and want. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, gathering Arya closer. "I can move if you need." "No need." He buckled his seatbelt with practiced ease, those amber eyes never leaving her face. "Rough night?" Zara's laugh came out brittle. "You could say that." Arya chose that moment to let out an ear-splitting wail. The stranger glanced at the baby, then back at Zara, and something shifted in his expression. Without a word, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather book. "May I?" He held it out to Arya, who immediately stopped crying and reached for the interesting new object. "Oh, you don't have to. It's fine." His lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "I don't use it anyway." Arya grabbed the book with both hands, immediately trying to stuff a corner in her mouth. The blessed silence that followed was worth whatever expensive item she was now drooling on. "Thank you," Zara breathed. "I'm Zara, by the way. And this is Arya. Damien." He studied them both with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Cross. The name didn't mean anything to her, but the way he said it suggested it should. She was too tired to care about alpha politics right now. All that mattered was that Arya was quiet and they were finally in the air. "She's beautiful," Damien said quietly. "How old?" 8 months. Zara's arms ached from holding her, but she didn't dare put Arya down. The baby was calm now, but that could change in an instant. "Long journey ahead?" Something in his tone made her glance at him sharply. "Not too long." She wasn't about to tell a strange alpha their plans. Even if he had helped with Arya. Damien nodded, seemingly satisfied with her non-answer. "The storm's supposed to clear up by morning. Should be smooth flying." The plane banked slightly, and Zara felt the familiar tug of takeoff. Below them, Seattle's lights grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the clouds. She was really doing this. She was really leaving everything behind. Her eyes grew heavy despite her best efforts. The adrenaline that had kept her running for 36 hours was finally wearing off, and the gentle hum of the engines was oddly soothing. Arya had fallen asleep against her chest, tiny fingers still clutching Damien's leather book. You should rest, Damien said softly. I'll keep an eye on her. I can't. The words came out more panicked than she intended. I mean, I don't sleep around strangers. It's not safe. I understand. And surprisingly, he did seem to understand. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition that made her think he knew exactly what she was running from. But you're exhausted. When was the last time you slept? She couldn't remember. The days had blurred together in a haze of work and planning and terror. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're dead on your feet. He reached up and pressed the call button. When the flight attendant appeared, he asked for a blanket. At least let me help. The blanket was soft and warm, and when he draped it over her shoulders, she caught another whiff of his scent. It was intoxicating in a way that should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safe. Protected. I really shouldn't, she murmured, but her eyes were already drifting closed. Just for a little while, Damien said. I promise nothing will happen to either of you. It was the promise that did it. Not because she believed him, she barely knew him, but because she wanted to believe him. Just for a few hours, she wanted to let someone else carry the weight of keeping them safe. She felt herself listing to the side, felt her head come to rest against something solid and warm. Damien's shoulder. She should pull away, should maintain her distance, but the exhaustion was stronger than her fear. Sleep, he said quietly, and she felt his hand settle gently on Arya's back. I've got you both. The last thing she remembered was the steady rhythm of his breathing and the way his scent seemed to wrap around them like a shield. Zara woke to sunlight streaming through the plane window and the gentle sound of Arya babbling. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was or how much time had passed. Then she felt the solid warmth beneath her cheek and realized she was still curled against Damien's shoulder. She jerked upright, heat flooding her cheeks. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It's fine. Damien's voice was rougher than before, and when she looked at him, there was something different in his expression. Something that made her stomach flutter with an emotion she couldn't name. You needed the rest. Arya was awake in his arms, playing with the buttons on his shirt. When had he taken her? And why did the sight of this dangerous alpha holding her baby so gently make her heart race? How long was I asleep? She asked, glancing out the window. The landscape below was different, more mountainous, more rugged than she expected. A few hours. Damien's smile was small but warm. She's been an angel. Slept most of the way. Most of the way to where? Zara frowned, something nagging at her. We should be landing in Denver soon, right? About that. Damien's smile widened, and for the first time, she noticed how perfectly white his teeth were. How his eyes seemed to hold secrets she couldn't begin to guess. There's been a slight change of plans. The plane began its descent, and Zara pressed her face to the window. This definitely wasn't Denver. The mountains were wrong, the buildings unfamiliar. Her blood ran cold. Where are we? Welcome to Portland, Damien said calmly, as if he hadn't just turned her world upside down. The flight was redirected due to weather. Didn't you hear the announcement? She hadn't heard any announcement. She'd been dead to the world, vulnerable and trusting in a way that could have gotten them both killed. I need to get to Denver. I have to. I'm afraid that's not possible tonight. Damien handed Arya back to her, and she noticed how his fingers lingered on hers for just a moment too long. All flights are grounded until morning. But don't worry, I'll make sure you're both taken care of. There was something in his tone, something in the way he was looking at her, that made her skin prickle with awareness. Not fear, exactly, but something far more dangerous. Something that whispered he knew exactly how she looked when she slept. Chapter 2. The Portland airport was smaller than Seattle's, but Zara barely noticed as Damien guided her through the terminal with a hand at the small of her back. His touch was light, almost casual, but she felt it like a brand through the thin fabric of her sweater. This way, he said, steering her toward the exit. My car's waiting. I can't. She stopped walking, clutching Arya tighter. I need to find another flight to Denver. Tonight. Damien's amber eyes never left her face. I'm afraid that's not possible. The storm system is massive, all flights west are grounded until at least tomorrow afternoon. She wanted to argue, to demand he prove it, but the exhaustion was creeping back in. Arya had started fussing again, and the familiar weight of desperation settled in her chest. She had exactly $43 in her wallet and no credit card that Alpha Marcus couldn't track. There has to be something, she said, hearing the pleading note in her own voice. There is. Damien's smile was gentle, but there was something else lurking beneath it. Something that made her pulse quicken. Come with me. I'll help you figure out your next move. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. Strange alphas didn't help Omega strangers without expecting something in return. But what choice did she have? She was stranded in an unfamiliar city with a baby and no resources. I can't pay you, she said quietly. I'm not asking for payment. His hand moved to the small of her back again, urging her forward. Just trust me. Trust. The word sat heavy between them as they walked through the automatic doors into the cool Portland night. A sleek black sedan waited at the curb, engine running. The driver, a mountain of a man in a dark suit, got out and opened the rear door. Thank you, Marcus, Damien said, and Zara's blood froze. Marcus? The name came out as a whisper. Damien glanced at her, frowning. My driver. Is something wrong? She shook her head quickly. It was just a coincidence. Marcus was a common name. It didn't mean anything. But as they settled into the leather seats, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about this night was coincidental. The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove through downtown Portland. Zara found herself studying Damien's profile in the intermittent streetlight. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe early 30s, with the kind of sharp, aristocratic features that spoke of good breeding and better money. What do you do? She asked, needing to fill the silence. I run a few businesses. His answer was deliberately vague. Import, export. Some real estate. In Portland? Among other places. He turned to look at her, and again she felt that flutter of danger mixed with something else she didn't want to name. What about you? What were you running from in Seattle? The question was casual, but she heard the steel beneath it. I wasn't running from anything. No? One dark eyebrow rose. 3 jobs, a baby, and a red-eye flight to Denver with one bag? That sounds like running to me. Heat flooded her cheeks. That's none of your business. You're right. But his tone suggested he thought it was very much his business. I'm sorry. I tend to be protective of those who need help. Before she could respond, the car stopped in front of a gleaming high-rise that seemed to stretch into the clouds. The driver came around to open her door, and Damien helped her out with the same careful courtesy he'd shown on the plane. This is where you live? She asked, craning her neck to look up at the building. Top floor. He guided her toward the entrance, where a doorman in a crisp uniform nodded respectfully. Good evening, Mr. Cross. Will you be needing anything tonight? No, thank you, James. Just privacy. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting, and Zara found herself staring at their reflection. She looked small and rumpled next to Damien's polished perfection, Arya a tiny bundle in her arms. What was she doing here? The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furnishings were all clean lines and expensive materials. It was beautiful, sophisticated, and utterly impersonal. It's lovely, she said, though the space felt more like a showroom than a home. Thank you. Damien shrugged out of his suit jacket and tossed it over the back of a leather chair. Are you hungry? I can have something sent up. I'm fine. She wasn't, but she didn't want to be more indebted to him than she already was. Maybe just, could I use your bathroom? To change her? Of course. He gestured down a hallway. Second door on the right. There are towels in the cabinet if you need them. The bathroom was bigger than her entire apartment back in Seattle, all marble and gold fixtures. She changed Aria's diaper on the counter, talking softly to keep the baby calm. When she emerged, she found Damien standing by the windows, a glass of what looked like whiskey in his hand. "Better?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." She bounced Aria gently, trying to settle her. "I really appreciate this, but I should probably find a hotel." "Sit down, Zara." Something in his tone made her freeze. When she looked at him, his expression had changed. The polite mask had slipped, revealing something harder underneath. "I said sit down." This time it wasn't a request. She sank onto the leather couch, every muscle tense. "What's going on?" Damien picked up a remote from the coffee table and pointed it at the massive wall-mounted television. The screen flickered to life, showing a news broadcast. The volume was low, but she could see the ticker at the bottom. Breaking, airport security footage shows missing woman and child. Her blood turned to ice. On screen, she watched herself and Aria boarding their flight in Seattle. The image was grainy, but clear enough to identify them both. "That's..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "You..." Damien's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "The news broke about an hour after takeoff. Your pack is very concerned about your welfare." He changed the channel, and now she was looking at a different news station. This one showed Alpha Marcus standing outside the Seattle airport, his face a mask of concern and righteous anger. "We just want them home safely," he was saying to the reporter. "Zara is fragile. She's not thinking clearly. She needs her pack's protection. Turn it off." The words came out strangled. Of course. The screen went black, but the damage was done. They'd found her already. Somehow, impossibly, they'd tracked her down. "How?" she whispered. "Credit card," Damien said simply. "The moment you bought that plane ticket, you might as well have sent up a flare. They had people at the airport within hours. But I paid cash. For the ticket, yes. But you used a card for the parking garage. And the coffee you bought at the gate. And the magazine." He set down his glass and came to sit across from her. "They've been tracking your movements all day." She felt sick. All her careful planning, all her precautions, and she'd been caught by something so simple. "They'll find me here." "No." His voice was absolutely certain. "They won't. You don't understand. Marcus has connections. So do I." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Better ones." She stared at him, pieces clicking into place. "You're not just some businessman, are you?" "No." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unsettling intensity. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" "Someone who's been watching your pack for a very long time." His smile was sharp as a blade. "Someone who's been waiting for the right moment to act." The room seemed to shrink around her. "You knew. When you sat next to me on the plane, you knew who I was." "I knew." He didn't try to deny it. "I've been tracking your scent for weeks, Zara. Waiting for you to run." "My scent?" Her voice cracked. "That's impossible. I was careful. You were at the Pike Place market 3 weeks ago. You brushed against me in the crowd." His eyes never left her face. "I've been looking for you ever since." The memory hit her like a physical blow. She had been at the market, picking up supplies for one of her jobs. She'd been distracted, worried about money, and she'd bumped into someone. A tall man in an expensive coat who'd steadied her with gentle hands and apologetic words. "That was you." "That was me." He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know what your pack is really involved in, Zara? They're controlling. Possessive. But they're not. They're traffickers." The words hit her like a slap. They buy and sell omegas to the highest bidder. Marcus has been grooming you for months, waiting for the right buyer. No. She shook her head violently. That's not, they wouldn't. There's a buyer in Denver. Damien's voice was flat, emotionless. A collector who specializes in rare omegas. He's been waiting for you for months. The room spun around her. Denver. Her destination. Where she'd thought she was fleeing to safety. You're lying. Am I? He turned back to her, and she saw something that might have been pity in his eyes. You can sense lies, can't you? It's why they wanted you so badly. An omega who can detect deception is worth her weight in gold to the right buyer. She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She could sense lies, had been able to since she was a child. It was why she'd always known when the pack elders were hiding something, why she'd never quite trusted Alpha Marcus despite his smooth words and kind facade. And Damien's scent carried no hint of deception. Oh God. The truth hit her like a physical blow. They were going to sell me. Yes. He moved back to his chair, sitting down slowly. And they were going to use Arya as leverage to keep you compliant. She looked down at the baby in her arms, so small and innocent and completely dependent on her for protection. The thought of anyone using her as a weapon made her stomach churn. But you stopped them, she said quietly. Why? Because I've been hunting your pack for 2 years. His voice was hard now, all pretense of politeness gone. They killed my sister. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with pain and fury. Zara stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not just a wealthy businessman, but a predator. Someone who'd been stalking her pack with the patience of a hunter. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I. He stood and walked to a desk in the corner, pulling out a tablet. But their operation ends now. With your help. My help? You're the key to everything. With your ability to detect lies, you can help me expose them. Bring them all down. She shook her head. I can't. I'm nobody. I don't have any power. You have more power than you know. He came back to her, holding out the tablet. Your belongings, by the way. I had them retrieved from your apartment. She stared at the screen, which showed photos of her meager possessions neatly arranged in boxes. You went through my things? I had to move quickly. Marcus's people were already watching your building. He set the tablet aside and leaned forward. Zara, I need you to understand something. You're not safe anywhere they can find you. But here, with me, you can be protected. By you. Her voice was flat. By me. His eyes met hers, and she saw something burning there that made her breath catch. I'll keep you safe. Both of you. But I need something in return. What? Stay. Help me destroy them. Let me protect you. She looked around the sterile perfection of his penthouse, then down at Arya, who was starting to fuss again. I don't have a choice, do I? There's always a choice. But his smile suggested otherwise. You can trust me, or you can take your chances on your own. Before she could respond, Arya started crying in earnest. Zara tried to soothe her, but the baby was tired and hungry and overwhelmed by the strange environment. She needs to eat, Zara said, looking around helplessly. And I don't have any formula. I'll handle it. Damien was already reaching for his phone. Marcus, I need you to go to the nearest store and buy baby supplies. Formula, diapers, whatever a 8-month-old needs. And food for her mother. Something simple. He hung up and turned back to her. 20 minutes. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. You're under my protection now. That means I take care of you. The word sent a shiver down her spine. Protection. It sounded so simple, so safe. But she'd learned the hard way that protection always came with a price. What happens if I say no? Then you leave. He spread his hands, the picture of reasonableness. I'll have Marcus drive you to a hotel. Give you enough money to get by for a few days. And when Marcus tracks you down, and he will, you'll be on your own. Not really a choice at all, then. She looked down at Arya, who was still crying despite her attempts to comfort her. The baby needed stability, safety, someone who could provide for her. And right now, Damien Cross was the only option she had. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay. Good. His smile was triumphant, possessive in a way that made her stomach flutter with something that wasn't entirely fear. Welcome to Portland, Zara. Welcome to my city. 20 minutes later, Marcus returned with enough baby supplies to stock a small store. Zara found herself sitting on Damien's pristine leather couch, feeding Arya while he stood across the room, talking quietly on his phone. Yes, I have her, he was saying. No, she's not going anywhere. Make sure the building is secure. I don't want anyone getting close to her. When he hung up, he found her watching him. Security, he explained. I like to be thorough. About everything? About the things that matter. His eyes met hers, and she felt that flutter again. And you matter, Zara. More than you know. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could, his phone rang again. This time, when he answered, his entire demeanor changed. What do you mean, they're here? His voice was sharp, dangerous. How many? He listened for a moment, then hung up and turned to her. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves your pack enforcers downstairs, demanding to search every apartment in the building. His smile was cold, predatory. It seems they've tracked you here after all. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. How? I'm not sure yet. But don't worry. He moved to the window, looking down at the street below. They're not getting up here. You don't understand. If they find me, they won't. He turned back to her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Something dark and possessive and completely uncompromising. You're mine now, Zara. And I protect what's mine. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent a thrill through her that she didn't want to examine too closely. She was trapped in a strange city with a dangerous man who claimed to be her protector. But as Arya settled in her arms, finally calm and fed, she realized she felt safer than she had in months. Even if safety came with a price she wasn't sure she was ready to pay. Chapter 3. The elevator descended past the lobby, past the parking garage, deeper into the building's foundation than Zara had known was possible. Damien stood beside her, one hand resting protectively on her lower back while the other held a security card against a black scanner. His touch was warm, possessive, and she found herself leaning into it despite every rational thought screaming at her to maintain distance. Where are we going? She asked, shifting Arya to her other hip. The baby had been unusually quiet since the confrontation with the pack enforcers, as if she sensed the tension crackling through the air. Somewhere safe, Damien replied, his voice low and reassuring. Somewhere they'll never find you. The elevator opened onto a corridor that looked nothing like the luxury penthouse above. Here, the walls were exposed brick, the lighting industrial but warm. It felt like stepping into a different world entirely, one that hummed with life and purpose. This way. Damien guided her down the hallway, past doors marked with numbers and nameplates. Through one open doorway, she glimpsed a woman about her own age reading to a small child. Through another, she saw a group of teenagers gathered around a table, working on what looked like homework. Damien? A woman emerged from one of the rooms, her face lighting up with genuine affection. She was older, maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. I didn't expect you down here tonight. Elena. He smiled, and Zara was struck by how different he looked, younger, less guarded. I'd like you to meet Zara. And this is Arya. Elena's expression shifted to one of understanding. Another rescue? Yes. Damien's hand moved to Zara's shoulder, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. They'll be staying upstairs with me for now. Something flickered across Elena's face, surprise, perhaps, or concern. Of course. Whatever you think is best. She turned to Zara with a warm smile. Welcome, dear. I'm Elena Rodriguez. I help run things down here. What is this place? Zara asked, still trying to process what she was seeing. Home, Elena said simply. For women and children who need a fresh start. Come, Damien said, steering her further down the corridor. Let me show you around. The underground sanctuary was larger than she'd imagined, a labyrinth of converted spaces that had been transformed into something resembling a small community. There was a common area with comfortable seating and a large television, a kitchen where several women were preparing what smelled like dinner, and a play area where children of various ages were engaged in games and activities. How many people live here? Zara asked, watching a little girl who couldn't be more than 6 years old help serve food to the others. It varies, Damien replied. Right now, about 40 women and children. Some stay for a few weeks while we help them relocate. Others. He paused, his expression darkening. Others have nowhere else to go. And you do this for all of them? Just out of the goodness of your heart? His laugh was bitter. Goodness has nothing to do with it. Before she could ask what he meant, a commotion erupted from the play area. A woman in her early 20s was trying to quarrel a toddler who was having a spectacular meltdown, throwing toys and screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm sorry, the woman said, looking harried and embarrassed. He's been like this all day. I think he's getting sick. Without hesitation, Damien approached the child, crouching down to his level. Hey there, buddy. What's wrong? The toddler looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, and something magical happened. The crying stopped. The child reached out tiny arms, and Damien scooped him up without a second thought. There we go, he murmured, bouncing the boy gently. You're okay. You're safe. The transformation was immediate. The toddler settled against Damien's chest, thumb finding his mouth, eyes growing heavy with exhaustion. The young mother looked stunned. How did you? He won't even let me hold him when he's like that. Sometimes they just need to know they're protected, Damien said softly, continuing to rock the child. How are you doing, Sarah? Any word from the counselor? She thinks it'll be another few weeks before the paperwork goes through, Sarah replied. But she's optimistic about the job placement. Good. Let me know if you need anything. He handed the now sleeping toddler back to his mother. Elena will make sure you have everything you need. As they walked away, Zara found herself studying Damien's profile. You know all their names. Of course I do. And their stories. Most of them. He stopped at a door marked private and pressed his palm to another scanner. This is my office down here. I thought you should see it. The room beyond was smaller than she'd expected, furnished with a simple desk and several chairs. The walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them, showing women and children of all ages. Some were candid shots, others looked more formal, like school pictures or family portraits. My sister, Damien said quietly, pointing to one photograph in particular. A young woman with his dark hair and amber eyes smiled back at them, holding a baby who looked remarkably like Arya. Anna. She was 22 when they took her. Zara's heart clenched. Damien, I'm so sorry. She was working as a nanny for a wealthy family in San Francisco. They told her parents she'd run away, that she was unstable and dangerous. By the time we realized what had really happened, it was too late. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could smell the rage underneath, sharp and bitter. We found her body 3 months later in a warehouse in Oakland. The pack that took her was working with yours. He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Marcus supplied them with information about vulnerable omegas. Your pack was the procurement arm of a much larger operation. The room seemed to spin around her. You're saying they were planning to sell me all along? From the moment you came of age. His hands clenched into fists. Marcus has been grooming you for years, making you dependent on the pack, isolated from outside influences. When the time was right, he would have sold you to the highest bidder and told everyone you'd run away. She sank into one of the chairs, Arya heavy in her arms. How long have you known? About you specifically? 6 months. I'd been tracking your pack's activities for 2 years, building a case against them. When I learned about you, about your abilities, I knew I had to act. My abilities. She looked down at Arya, who was starting to fuss again. You mean the lie detection? Among other things. He moved to sit across from her, leaning forward intently. You can sense pheromones at a level most omegas can't. You can detect deception, yes, but also fear, attraction, intent. It's incredibly rare. And incredibly valuable. To the right buyer, yes. His expression darkened. There are people who would pay millions for an omega with your gifts. They'd use you to interrogate prisoners, to expose business rivals, to gain advantage in negotiations. The thought made her sick. Is that why you're helping me? Because of what I can do? No. The word was sharp, immediate. I'm helping you because no one helped my sister. Because you deserve better than what they had planned for you. Because. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Because the moment I caught your scent at Pike Place Market, I knew I couldn't let anyone else have you. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications. Zara felt her cheeks warm, her pulse quicken. There was something in his voice, in the way he was looking at her, that made her stomach flutter with a mixture of fear and anticipation. We should get back upstairs, she said quietly. Arya needs to eat again. Of course. He stood, offering her his hand. But first, I want you to meet someone else. He led her to another room, this one set up as a nursery. Several cribs lined the walls, and a woman in her 30s was rocking a baby who couldn't be more than a few months old. This is Dr. Rebecca Hayes, Damien said. She's a pediatrician who volunteers here. Rebecca, this is Zara. Dr. Hayes looked up with a smile. Hello, Zara. And who's this little one? Arya, Zara replied, instinctively pulling the baby closer. She's 8 months old. She's beautiful. The doctor's voice was warm, professional. If you'd like, I could take a look at her tomorrow. Just to make sure everything's okay after your long journey. That's very kind, but... Rebecca also helps with documentation, Damien said smoothly. Birth certificates, medical records, anything needed for a fresh start. The implication was clear. He was offering to help her disappear completely, to give both her and Arya new identities. The thought was both terrifying and tempting. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she said. No pressure, Dr. Hayes assured her. The offer stands whenever you're ready. As they rode the elevator back up to the penthouse, Zara found herself lost in thought. The sanctuary was impressive, clearly the work of someone who genuinely cared about helping vulnerable omegas. But it also felt like a trap, a gilded cage designed to keep her dependent on Damien's protection. You're very quiet, he observed. Just thinking. She glanced at him sideways. How many of the women down there are free to leave whenever they want? All of them. His answer was immediate, but she caught something in his scent, not exactly a lie, but not the complete truth either. Though most choose to stay until they're ready to start over somewhere else. And what happens to the ones who want to leave before you think they're ready? He was quiet for a long moment. I've never had to find out. The elevator doors opened onto his penthouse, and Zara was struck again by the contrast. Where the sanctuary below felt warm and lived in, this space was cold and impersonal. Beautiful, but sterile. I should feed Arya, she said, moving toward the couch. Of course. I'll be in my office if you need anything. As she settled on the leather sofa with a bottle of formula, Zara found herself studying the space more carefully. The windows were floor to ceiling, but she noticed now that they didn't open. The door to the balcony was secured with what looked like a high-tech lock. And were those cameras in the corners of the ceiling? "Damien," she called out. "Yes?" He appeared in the doorway of his office, phone in hand. "The cameras. Are they recording?" "For security purposes, yes." He moved closer, his expression carefully neutral. "I told you, I take your safety seriously." "And my phone?" "It's not getting a signal. The building has signal blockers. I can have the IT team add you to the approved list tomorrow." "What if I need to make a call now?" "You can use the landline in my office." His tone was reasonable, but she heard the steel beneath it. "Who did you need to call?" The question felt like a test. "No one in particular. I like knowing I can." "I understand." He sat down across from her, his movements fluid and controlled. "But right now, any communication you make could be traced back to this location. I'm not willing to risk your safety for the convenience of a phone call." It made sense, she supposed. But it still felt like a cage, no matter how beautiful the bars. Arya finished her bottle and promptly spit up on the leather cushion. Zara grabbed for a burp cloth, but Damien was already there with a handful of paper towels. "I'm so sorry," she said, mortified. "This couch probably cost more than my car." "It's fine." He cleaned up the mess without complaint, then surprised her by settling beside her on the couch. "May I?" Before she could protest, he was reaching for Arya, lifting her with confident hands. The baby gurgled happily, tiny fingers grabbing at his tie. "You're good with her," Zara observed. "I've had practice." He bounced Arya gently, smiling when she laughed. The children in the sanctuary don't care about business suits or intimidating reputations. They just want to feel safe. "Is that what you want? To feel safe?" He looked at her over Arya's head, and she saw something vulnerable in his expression. "I want to keep the people I care about safe. There's a difference. And I'm one of those people now?" "Yes." The word was simple, but weighted with meaning. "You are." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen, then answered. "Vincent?" "What do you mean, papers?" His expression hardened. "Who's asking for her?" Zara's blood ran cold. "What is it?" Damien held up a hand, listening intently. "I don't care what the papers say. She's under my protection now." He paused, then, "Fine. Send them up." "But Vincent?" "Full security escort. And have the legal team standing by." He hung up and turned to her, his face grim. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that walks through the front door with a briefcase full of legal documents." He stood, handing Arya back to her. "Someone claiming to be your maid is downstairs with papers saying you and Arya belong to him." "That's impossible. I've never been mated." "I know." His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. "But the papers look authentic. And werewolf law is very specific about mated pairs and their offspring." The elevator chimed, and moments later, Vincent appeared with 3 men in expensive suits. The one in the center was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He carried himself with the arrogance of an alpha who was used to getting his way. "Knox," the man said, extending his hand to Damien. "Alpha Knox Patterson. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Damien didn't take the offered hand. "I don't believe we've met." "No, but I know who you are, Mr. Cross. Your reputation precedes you." Knox's gaze moved to Zara, and she suppressed a shiver. "Hello, little Omega. It's time to come home." "I don't know you," Zara said, clutching Arya tighter. "Don't you?" Knox smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We were mated 6 months ago. A private ceremony, just the 2 of us. You were overcome with emotion afterward. These things happen with young Omegas." "That's not true." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. She'd been having strange dreams lately, fragments of memories that didn't quite fit together. What if? I have the documentation, Knox said, pulling out a folder. Marriage certificate, signed by both of us. Medical records showing your pregnancy. Birth certificate listing me as the father of your child. Damien stepped forward, his body language shifting into something predatory. Let me see those papers. Knox handed them over with a smile. Everything is in order, I assure you. I've come to collect my family. As Damien examined the documents, Zara found herself studying Knox's face. He was handsome in a cold, calculating way, but there was something about him that made her skin crawl. More than that, his scent was wrong, sharp with deception and something else she couldn't identify. These are forgeries, Damien said finally. Are they? Knox's smile widened. Perhaps you'd like to contest them in court. I'm sure a judge would be very interested to hear why you're harboring another alpha's maiden child. Because she's not your mate. Damien's voice was deadly quiet. And that's not your child. I'm afraid you're wrong. Knox turned to Zara, his expression softening in a way that somehow made him more frightening. Come, darling. It's time to go home. I'm not going anywhere with you, Zara said, her voice stronger than she felt. Oh, but you are. Knox's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something dark and ugly underneath. You see, Mr. Cross, werewolf law is very clear. A mated female belongs to her alpha. And if that alpha chooses to take custody of his heir. He shrugged. Well, there's really nothing you can do about it. Damien moved to stand between Knox and Zara, his body radiating menace. Over my dead body. Knox laughed, a sound like breaking glass. That can be arranged. The tension in the room was suffocating. Zara could smell the aggression rolling off both men, the barely contained violence that threatened to explode at any moment. Arya began to cry, sensing the danger. There's no need for unpleasantness, Knox said, his voice deceptively calm. I'm simply here to collect what's mine. The law is on my side. The law can go to hell, Damien replied. She's not leaving with you. We'll see about that. Knox nodded to his companions. I'll be back tomorrow with the proper authorities. I suggest you have your affairs in order by then, Mr. Cross. Interfering with a mated pair is a serious crime. As the elevator doors closed behind them, Zara felt the last of her strength give out. She sank onto the couch, Arya still crying in her arms, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Hey. Damien was beside her immediately, his voice gentle. Look at me. She raised her eyes to his, seeing her own fear reflected there. What if he's right? What if I was mated to him and I just don't remember? You weren't. His voice was absolute certainty. Your scent would carry his mark if you were truly mated. And that man. He shook his head. That man has never touched you. How can you be sure? Because, he said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands, you're mine. And I protect what's mine. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent a thrill of something dangerously close to desire through her veins. She found herself leaning into his touch, craving the safety and certainty he represented. What happens now? She whispered. Now, he said, his thumb stroking across her cheekbones, we fight. And we win. His scent wrapped around her like a blanket, warm and intoxicating and completely addictive. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt truly safe. Even if safety came at a price she was only beginning to understand. Chapter 4. Morning came too early, filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damien's penthouse like a harsh interrogation light. Zara had barely slept, her mind churning with Knox's claims and the implications of those forged documents. Arya, blessedly, had slept through the night in the makeshift nursery Damien had created in his guest room, complete with a crib that had appeared sometime during the dark hours. She found Damien in his kitchen, already dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, controlled, but she caught the edge of steel beneath the civilized veneer. I don't care what it costs, Vincent. I want every single one of those credit cards frozen. Bank accounts too. And make sure his hotel knows about the outstanding warrant in Seattle. He paused, listening. What do you mean, what warrant? The one you're going to create in the next 10 minutes. Zara cleared her throat, and he turned, his expression softening marginally when he saw her. Handle it, he said into the phone, then hung up. Good morning. Coffee? What warrant in Seattle? She asked, accepting the mug he offered. The coffee was perfect, rich, hot, exactly how she liked it. She tried not to think about how he'd known that. Knox Patterson has several outstanding parking tickets that have escalated to bench warrants. Amazing how these things get overlooked by the system. His smile was sharp as a blade. Of course, now that they've been brought to the proper authorities' attention. You can do that? Just create legal problems for someone? I can do a lot of things, Zara. He leaned against the counter, studying her over his own coffee cup. The question is whether you're comfortable with my methods. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and his smile widened into something genuinely amused. It seems Mr. Patterson's car has been towed from the hotel parking lot. Expired registration. Such a shame. Damien. He's also been asked to leave his hotel. Apparently, there was some confusion about his reservation. These computer glitches happen all the time. He set down his coffee and moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. I told you, I take care of what's mine. The possessive tone in his voice sent heat spiraling through her, even as her rational mind rebelled against the implication. I'm not yours. Aren't you? His amber eyes held hers captive. You're in my home, under my protection, wearing clothes I bought for you. Knox Patterson thinks he owns you, but he's wrong. You belong here. With me. Her knees felt weak, and she gripped the coffee mug tighter to hide the tremor in her hands. That's not. I can't just belong to someone. Can't you? He reached out, his fingers ghosting along her cheek. You feel it too. This pull between us. It's not just chemistry, Zara. It's recognition. She stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. We need to talk about those documents. If Knox has legal papers, then we'll destroy them. His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he'd just suggested ordering takeout. Along with any copies, backup files, and the lawyers who helped create them. The casual way he spoke about destruction, legal and otherwise, should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel protected in a way she'd never experienced before. The thought disturbed her more than his threats. A cry from the guest room interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Aria's awake. I'll get her. Damien was already moving, and she followed, curious despite herself. She found him lifting Aria from the crib with practiced ease, murmuring soft words as the baby settled against his chest. But what caught her attention wasn't his gentleness, it was the way Aria was looking up at him, her tiny brow furrowed in what looked like intense concentration. She's doing it again, Zara said, unable to suppress a smile. Doing what? Watch. Zara pointed as Aria's expression shifted, her little face scrunching into a perfect imitation of Damien's serious business expression. The resemblance was so uncanny that Zara burst into laughter. Damien looked down at the baby, then back at Zara. She's not. Oh, she is. Still laughing, Zara pulled out her phone to take a picture, then remembered it wasn't working. Can I borrow your phone? I need to capture this. He handed over his device without hesitation, and she snapped several photos of Aria's stern little face. When she looked up, she found Damien watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? Nothing. It's just, you're beautiful when you laugh. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities, until Aria decided she was hungry and made her displeasure known with a lusty cry. I should feed her, Zara said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Vincent's bringing more supplies this morning. Formula, baby food, anything she might need. He transferred Arya to her arms, his fingers lingering against hers. I don't want you to worry about anything practical. I'll handle it all. I can take care of my own daughter. Of course you can. But you don't have to. Not anymore. There it was again, that subtle insistence that she surrender her independence to his protection. Part of her wanted to argue, to assert her autonomy. But a larger part, the part that was bone-deep tired of struggling alone, wanted to let him take care of everything. The thought scared her more than Knox's legal threats. They were interrupted by the sound of the elevator, followed by Vincent's voice calling out. Mr. Cross? I have those reports you requested. Bring them to the living room, Damien called back, then turned to Zara. You might want to hear this. Vincent appeared with a thick folder and a tablet, his expression grim. Sir, we've done a deep dive on Knox Patterson. The news isn't good. How not good? Damien settled on the couch beside Zara, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He's been planning this for months. The documents aren't just forgeries, they're sophisticated ones, backed by an entire false identity system. Bank records showing joint accounts, medical records indicating a mating ceremony, even witness statements from pack members claiming they attended the wedding. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. That's impossible. I would remember getting married. Not if you were drugged, Vincent said quietly. There are substances that can create false memories, make someone believe they consented to things they didn't. Are you saying he? She couldn't finish the sentence. We don't know for certain, Damien said, his voice carefully controlled. But it's a possibility we have to consider. There's more, Vincent continued. Knox isn't working alone. We've traced payments from Ravencroft Industries to several of the witnesses. Large payments, made just last week. Ravencroft Industries. Damien's voice had gone dangerously quiet. Celeste. Who's Celeste? Zara asked, though she had a sinking feeling she didn't want to know. Celeste Ravencroft. Damien stood abruptly, pacing to the window. My ex-fiancée. And apparently, the architect of this entire scheme. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. She's using Knox to get to you. It appears so. He turned back to them, his expression carved from stone. Vincent, I want everything we can find on Ravencroft Industries' recent activities. Financial records, business partnerships, travel logs. Everything. Already on it, sir. But there's something else you should know. Vincent hesitated. Patterson's been spotted at 3 different diners this morning. Apparently, his car alarm kept going off all night outside the first one, so he had to keep moving. Despite everything, Zara felt a laugh bubble up. You're having his car alarm triggered on purpose? It's a security feature, Damien said solemnly. The system is very sensitive to various stimuli. Sir, Vincent added, clearly fighting his own smile, the baby's expressions have become quite popular with the security team. Johnson has started doing impressions. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Arya chose that moment to scrunch up her face in another perfect imitation of Damien's serious expression. This time, she added a tiny frown that made her look like she was contemplating hostile takeovers. Vincent actually chuckled. Just like that, sir. My security team is being corrupted by an 8-month-old, Damien said, but there was fondness in his voice. Speaking of which, Vincent continued, we've had a request from the sanctuary. Some of the women would like to meet Arya. Elena thinks it might be good for morale. Zara looked up sharply. I'd like that. I'd like to see more of the sanctuary, talk to some of the other women. Absolutely not. Damien's response was immediate and non-negotiable. It's not safe. How is it not safe? It's your own building, surrounded by your security. Knox knows you're here. If you're seen moving around the building, then I'll be careful. But I can't stay locked up in this penthouse forever. She stood, facing him down despite the way his expression had darkened. I need to feel useful, Damien. I need to do something besides sit here and wait for you to solve my problems. Your safety is more important than your need to feel useful. Says who? The words came out sharper than she'd intended. I've been taking care of myself and Arya for months. I don't need to be wrapped in cotton wool. You've been surviving, he corrected. There's a difference between surviving and being truly safe. And the price of your safety is my freedom? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to fully address. Vincent cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps I should leave you two to discuss this privately. Stay, Damien said curtly. We're done discussing. No, we're not. Zara felt anger rising, hot and clean. You can't just make unilateral decisions about my life. I can when those decisions keep you alive. This isn't living, Damien. This is existing in a beautiful cage. Something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, or recognition. But it was gone too quickly to be sure. I'm protecting you. By controlling every aspect of my life? By making me dependent on you for everything? She gestured around the pristine penthouse. You've cut off my phone service, my access to money, my ability to come and go freely. How is that different from what Marcus was doing? Because I'm not going to sell you to the highest bidder, he said, his voice deadly quiet. No, you're just going to keep me for yourself. The words hung between them like a gauntlet thrown down. Vincent muttered something about checking on security and disappeared into the elevator, leaving them alone with the truth neither wanted to acknowledge. Is that what you think this is? Damien asked finally. I don't know what to think anymore. She sank back onto the couch, Arya heavy in her arms. 3 days ago, I was running for my life. Now I'm in a penthouse with a man who claims he's protecting me while systematically cutting off every avenue of independence I have left. Zara. And the worst part is, I think I'm starting to like it. The admission felt like ripping off a bandage. I like having someone take care of the details. I like feeling safe. I like the way you look at me like I'm precious. And that terrifies me, because I don't know if these feelings are real or if this is just Stockholm Syndrome. Damien was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those intense amber eyes. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. What if they're both real? What do you mean? What if you're responding to captivity, but you're also responding to me? What if the circumstances brought us together, but the connection is genuine? She wanted to deny it, to maintain some emotional distance, but the truth was written in the way her pulse quickened when he was near, the way she craved his scent, the way she felt safest when he was touching her. I need some air, she said abruptly, standing. I need to go outside, just for a few minutes. You can't. The words were automatic, reflexive. I can't, or you won't let me? Both. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. Knox could have people watching the building. One photograph of you outside, and he'll know exactly where you are. Then I'll go to the sanctuary. Just for an hour. Vincent can escort me. No. Damien. I said no. His voice had gone cold, controlled. This discussion is over. Something snapped inside her. Maybe it was the accumulated stress of the past few days, or the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped, or simply the way he dismissed her needs so completely. Without really thinking about it, she headed for the elevator. Where are you going? Down to the sanctuary. To talk to Elena and the other women. To remind myself that there's a world outside this penthouse. Zara, stop. There was command in his voice now, the authority of an alpha who expected to be obeyed. She turned back to him, Arya balanced on her hip, and saw something that made her heart clench. Beneath the control, beneath the commanding presence, she glimpsed something raw and desperate. Fear, maybe. Or panic. Please, he said, and the words sounded like it had been torn from somewhere deep inside him. Please don't leave. The naked vulnerability in his voice stopped her cold. This wasn't about control or possession. This was about a man who'd lost his sister, who'd built his life around protecting people, watching someone he cared about walk into potential danger. "I'm not leaving the building," she said gently. "I'm just going downstairs." "You don't understand." He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its perfect styling. When Anna disappeared, it was because she left her safe space for just 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Zara. That's all it took. "I'm not Anna." "No, you're not." His eyes met hers, and she saw everything he wasn't saying. "You're more important." The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to fully explore. Zara felt her resolve wavering, caught between her need for independence and her growing feelings for this complicated, dangerous man. "1 hour," she said finally. "In the sanctuary, with Vincent as escort. That's all I'm asking." Damien stared at her for a long moment, and she could practically see him weighing her safety against her autonomy, his need to control against his desire to make her happy. "1 hour," he said finally. "But Vincent stays with you every moment. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you come back immediately." "Agreed." "And Zara?" He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "When you come back, we're going to finish this conversation. All of it." The promise in his voice sent heat spiraling through her, even as it raised new questions about what exactly they were building between them. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed behind her, she caught one last glimpse of Damien standing in his perfect penthouse, looking more alone than any man should. The image stayed with her as the elevator descended, a reminder that sometimes the people who seemed to have everything were the ones who had the most to lose. And despite everything, the control, the manipulation, the beautiful cage he'd built around her, she was starting to think she might be falling in love with her captor. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it just made her want to go back upstairs and finish that conversation sooner rather than later. Chapter 5. The hour in the sanctuary had been exactly what Zara needed, a reminder that there was life beyond Damien's penthouse, that other women had survived situations like hers and found their strength again. But as the elevator rose back to the top floor, her stomach churned with the decision she'd made while talking to Elena and the other survivors. She was going to do something monumentally stupid. Damien was waiting for her when the doors opened, pacing the living room like a caged predator. His relief when he saw her was palpable, quickly followed by suspicion when he caught her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, taking Arya from her arms with practiced ease. "I need to talk to you about Knox. We're handling Knox. By hiding me away and hoping the legal system works in our favor?" She shook her head. "That's not going to be enough, and you know it." Damien's jaw tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we beat him at his own game." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for his reaction. "I want to go back to him. Pretend to comply with his demands while we gather evidence of what he's really doing." The silence that followed was deafening. Damien went perfectly still, his amber eyes darkening to something dangerous. "Absolutely not." "Damien." "No." The word was final, brooking no argument. "I won't allow it." "You won't allow it?" Heat flared in her chest. "I'm not asking for permission." "Then you're asking for suicide." He set Arya in her bouncer with careful precision, but Zara could see the tension coiled in every line of his body. "Knox is dangerous. If he even suspects you're working against him, he won't suspect anything because I'll give him exactly what he wants. A compliant Omega who's learned her place." The words tasted bitter, but she forced them out. "Elena told me about the other women Knox has targeted. 3 in the past year, all disappeared. If we don't stop him now, we'll find another way." "There is no other way." She moved closer, needing him to understand. "Those legal documents are too good, Damien. Even if we prove they're forgeries, Knox will disappear and start over somewhere else with a new identity. More women will die. Not you." His voice was rough with emotion. "I won't lose you to him." The raw vulnerability in his admission made her heart clench, but she couldn't let it sway her. You won't lose me. I'll be careful. Like Anna was careful? The words exploded out of him. Like she promised she'd be safe when she left the house that last morning? Zara saw the truth then, the guilt and grief that drove his need to control everything, to protect everyone in his orbit from the dangers he couldn't eliminate. Her heart broke for him, but it didn't change what needed to be done. I'm not Anna, she said softly. And I won't be going in blind. You won't be going in at all. Yes, I will. She met his stare without flinching. Because if I don't, Knox will keep hunting us. Celeste Ravencroft will keep funding him. And eventually, they'll find a way to take me and Arya anyway. Something shifted in his expression at the mention of Celeste's name. How do you know about Celeste? Elena. She knows more about your past than you might think. Zara studied his face, reading the complex emotions there. She told me Celeste Ravencroft was more than just a business rival. Damien's laugh was bitter. Celeste was my fiancée. For about 6 months, 2 years ago. I thought she shared my vision for helping vulnerable Omegas. I was wrong. What happened? I found out she was selling information about the women in our program to the highest bidder. When I confronted her, she claimed she was trying to protect me from making emotional decisions. His hands clenched into fists. She couldn't understand why I'd waste resources on damaged goods when I could be building an empire. The coldness in his voice made Zara shiver. So you ended it. I destroyed her. Professionally, financially, personally. Made sure no one in our circles would trust her again. His smile was sharp as a blade. Apparently, she's decided to return the favor. Using Knox to get to you. Using you to get to me. The distinction was important, she realized. In Celeste's mind, Zara wasn't a person, she was a weapon to be turned against Damien. Then let's give her what she wants, Zara said quietly. Let her think she's winning while we gather the evidence we need to destroy them both. By putting you directly in harm's way. By putting me in the one place where I can do the most good. She reached for his hands, feeling the tension in his fingers. I can sense lies, Damien. I can get them to reveal things they'd never tell anyone else. And if they hurt you? They won't. Knox needs me compliant, not broken. And if things go wrong? She squeezed his hands. You'll be watching every move, won't you? The question hung between them, loaded with trust and fear and something deeper than either was ready to name. Finally, Damien exhaled slowly. If we do this, and I mean if, it's on my terms. My rules. What rules? You wear everything I give you. Jewelry, clothes, everything. No exceptions. Why? Because every piece will have tracking and listening devices. I'll know where you are every second, hear every conversation. The thought should have been invasive, claustrophobic. Instead, it felt like a lifeline. Okay. You do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Agreed. And the moment, the second, I think you're in real danger, the operation ends. I don't care if we have enough evidence or not. She nodded, though they both knew she might not have a choice if things went sideways. When? She asked. Tomorrow morning. I'll have Vincent make contact, let Knox know you've seen reason and want to come home. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could smell the rage and fear beneath the surface. God help me, I'm going to let you walk into that bastard's hands. You're going to let me save other women from the same fate Anna suffered. I'm going to let the woman I'm falling in love with risk her life for strangers, he corrected roughly. There's a difference. The admission stole her breath. She'd suspected, hoped, but hearing him say it out loud changed everything. Damien. Don't. He pulled his hands free, stepping back. Don't say anything you might regret once this is over. But she could see the truth in his eyes, smell it in his scent. This wasn't one-sided anymore. Whatever was happening between them had moved far beyond protector and protectee. I should get some sleep, she said finally. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Yes. He was already moving toward his office. I have preparations to make. She watched him go, recognizing the emotional retreat for what it was. Tomorrow, she'd walk into the enemy's hands, and tonight, Damien was pulling back to protect himself from the possibility of losing her. The thought made her want to follow him, to finish the conversation they'd been dancing around since the moment they met. But Arya chose that moment to start fussing, reminding Zara that some things were more important than her confusing feelings for her protector. The next morning arrived too quickly and not soon enough. Zara woke to find Vincent in the living room with Damien, both men wearing expressions that suggested they'd been planning military operations rather than an undercover mission. Good morning, she said, bouncing a grumpy Arya on her hip. The baby had been restless all night, seeming to sense the tension in the apartment. These are for you. Damien handed her a jewelry box without ceremony. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, matching earrings, and a bracelet that looked expensive enough to fund a small country. They're beautiful, she said, lifting the necklace. It was heavier than it looked, and she could feel the slight weight of the electronics hidden within the design. The necklace has a panic button, Vincent explained, his tone all business. Press the pendant twice quickly, and we'll come for you immediately. The earrings have microphones, and the bracelet has GPS tracking accurate to within 3 feet. And this. Damien produced a designer handbag that probably cost more than her old car. Camera in the clasp, recording device in the lining, and another GPS tracker in the handle. You've thought of everything. I've tried to. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the strain around his eyes. Knox is expecting you in an hour. Vincent will drive you to the meeting point. Where? The Riverside Hotel downtown. He's rented a suite. The same hotel where they'd had his reservations mysteriously cancelled, she realized. He'd found new accommodations quickly. What's my story? Why did I suddenly decide to comply? You realized fighting him was futile, Damien said, his voice flat. You're scared and alone, and you want to protect Arya. You're willing to do whatever he asks as long as he promises not to hurt your daughter. The scenario was believable because it was partially true. She was scared, and she would do anything to protect Arya. The difference was that she wasn't alone. Damien would be with her every step of the way, even if Knox couldn't see him. Remember, Vincent added, Knox is expecting a broken Omega. Submissive, compliant, grateful for his protection. Don't give him any reason to suspect you're still fighting. I understand. She looked around the penthouse one more time, memorizing details. Just in case. Zara. Damien's voice stopped her at the elevator. Come back to me. The words were simple, but weighted with everything they hadn't said to each other. I will. As the elevator descended, she tried to transform herself into the woman Knox expected to see. Shoulders rounded, eyes downcast, every line of her body radiating defeat. By the time Vincent's car pulled up to the hotel, she was ready. Knox was waiting in the lobby, his cold smile widening when he saw her approach. There's my good girl. I knew you'd see reason. I'm sorry I ran, she said quietly, letting her voice shake slightly. I was scared and confused. I didn't know what I was doing. Of course you didn't. His hands settled possessively on her lower back. Omegas aren't meant to make these kinds of decisions alone. That's what you have me for. The patronizing tone made her skin crawl, but she forced herself to lean into his touch. In her ear, she heard Damien's voice through the hidden earpiece, low and dangerous. I'm going to kill him. She fought the urge to smile. Knox's suite was opulent but sterile, decorated in shades of gold and cream that somehow managed to look expensive and tasteless at the same time. He guided her to a sitting area, his hands lingering too long on her shoulders. Where's our daughter? He asked, settling beside her on the couch. Safe, she replied. I wanted to make sure we could work things out before I brought her into this. Wise. Though I'm disappointed you don't trust me enough to have brought her along. His eyes were cold despite his smile. After all, she is my heir. In her ear, Damien's voice was a barely controlled growl. Lying bastard. Knox leaned closer, and Zara forced herself not to recoil from his scent, sharp with deception and something darker she couldn't identify. There are some people I'd like you to meet, he said. Business associates who are very interested in your unique talents. What kind of business associates? The kind who appreciate rare gifts and are willing to pay handsomely for access to them. His hand moved to her knee, and she felt Damien's rage crackle through the earpiece. Don't worry, darling. You'll be very well compensated for your services. Services? Your ability to detect deception, of course. There are many situations where such a talent would be invaluable. His smile turned predatory. Interrogations, negotiations, eliminating problems. The implications made her stomach turn, but she kept her expression neutral. I don't understand. You will. He stood, moving to a bar cart and pouring himself a whiskey. But first, I have a small test for you. A way to prove your loyalty. What kind of test? There's a young Omega working at the coffee shop downstairs. Pretty little thing, probably no more than 19. She's been asking too many questions about our operation. He turned back to her, whiskey glass in hand. I need you to befriend her. Gain her trust. Find out what she knows and who she's working for. Zara's blood ran cold. And then? Then we'll decide how to handle the problem. His tone was casual, as if they were discussing the weather. I'm sure you understand the importance of loyalty, Zara. Of protecting the pack from threats. In her earpiece, Damien's voice was deadly quiet. Don't do it. We'll find another way. But Knox was watching her carefully, testing her compliance. If she refused, he'd know she wasn't the broken Omega she was pretending to be. Of course, she said softly. Whatever you need. Excellent. His smile was triumphant. I knew you'd see reason. Over the next 2 hours, Knox outlined his operation with the casual arrogance of a man who believed he was untouchable. He had contacts in law enforcement, judges who could be bought, and a network of traffickers that stretched across 3 states. Zara listened with growing horror, filing away every detail while Damien's voice provided a steady stream of encouragement and protective threats in her ear. You're doing perfectly, he murmured during a moment when Knox stepped away to take a phone call. Just a little longer. When Knox returned, his expression had changed. There was something predatory in his eyes that made her skin crawl. That was interesting, he said, settling back on the couch. It seems our daughter has been quite busy in your absence. What do you mean? She's been crying for someone who isn't her mother. Someone whose scent she finds comforting. His eyes narrowed. Care to explain why a baby who supposedly hasn't seen her father in months would be calling for Dada? Zara's heart stopped. Somehow, Knox had been watching Damien's building, had sources inside who'd reported back about Aria's behavior. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but she could hear the tremor in her own voice. Don't you? Knox's smile was sharp as a blade. I think you've been a very bad Omega, Zara. I think you've been letting another alpha play daddy to my daughter. That's not. The question is, he continued, standing and moving to look out the window, whether you're working with him voluntarily, or if he's simply taken advantage of a vulnerable Omega in distress. In her earpiece, Damien's voice was urgent. Get out. Now. Vincent's in the lobby. But Knox was blocking her path to the door, and she could see the calculation in his eyes. He'd known. Maybe not everything, but enough to set a trap. Actually, Knox said, turning back to her with a smile that made her blood freeze, I'm hoping it's the former. You see, Damien Cross has been a thorn in my side for far too long. And nothing would give me greater pleasure than using his precious Omega to draw him out into the open. The mask was off now, revealing the predator beneath. And Zara realized with sinking horror that she wasn't the hunter in this scenario. She was the bait. "He'll come for me," she said quietly. "Oh, I'm counting on it." Knox's laugh was cold as winter. "The question is whether he'll be smart enough to come alone, or if he'll bring enough firepower to make things interesting." Through the earpiece, she heard Damien's voice, deadly calm now. "Tell him I'll be there in 10 minutes. And Knox? When I get there, you'd better pray I'm feeling merciful." Knox's smile widened as if he'd heard the threat himself. "This is going to be fun." Chapter 6. Knox's smile turned predatory as he watched Zara's face drain of color. "You really thought you could outsmart me? A little Omega with delusions of heroism?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Zara said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Don't you?" He moved closer, close enough that she could smell the anticipation rolling off him in waves. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice the expensive jewelry? The designer clothes? The way you carry yourself like someone who's been sleeping in silk sheets instead of running for her life?" Through her earpiece, Damien's voice was deadly calm. "Keep him talking. Vincent's already in position." Knox circled her like a predator studying prey. The tracking devices were a nice touch. Very professional. "But you made one crucial mistake, darling." "What mistake?" "You assumed I was working alone." His laugh was cold as winter wind. "Celeste Ravencroft sends her regards, by the way. She's been monitoring Cross's communications for weeks. Every call, every text, every whispered endearment through your little earpiece." Zara's blood turned to ice. If Celeste had been listening to their communications, then she knew everything: the sanctuary, the rescue operation, Damien's feelings for her. Surprised? Knox's eyes glittered with malicious pleasure. "Celeste has her own network, her own resources. Did you really think Cross was the only one with connections in this city? What do you want?" Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Originally, I wanted to use you to destroy Cross slowly, methodically. Break his precious rescue network, expose his illegal activities, watch him lose everything he's built." Knox poured himself another whiskey, his movements casual despite the violence implicit in his words. "But plans change. You've become too much of a liability. So you're going to what? Kill me? Kill you?" Knox laughed, genuinely amused. "Oh, darling, you're far too valuable to kill. No, I'm going to sell you. Tonight. To a buyer in Vancouver who's been very patient while I played these games with Cross." The casual way he discussed her sale, as if she were livestock, made bile rise in her throat. "You won't get away with this." "Won't I?" He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "I'm sending your location to Cross right now. He'll come running, of course. Probably bring his entire security team. And while he's focused on rescuing his precious Omega, Celeste's people will be moving on his sanctuary." The implications hit her like a physical blow. "The women and children will be relocated to more profitable arrangements." Knox's smile was razor sharp. "It's really quite elegant. I get rid of you and eliminate Cross's operation in one night. Celeste reclaims her territory, and I walk away with enough money to start over somewhere warm." Through her earpiece, she heard Damien's voice, and the barely controlled rage in it made her shiver. "Vincent, initiate Omega Protocol. All units, all assets. I want every street within 6 blocks locked down in the next 10 minutes. Knox was still talking, outlining his plans with the arrogance of a man who believed he'd already won. But Zara was listening to the subtle sounds coming through her earpiece: voices, movement, the quiet efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing. "You might want to look outside," she said quietly. Knox frowned, moving to the window. What he saw made him go very still. Down on the street, a convoy of white vans had appeared, each emblazoned with Apex Pest Control Services, in cheerful blue lettering. Men in matching coveralls were unloading equipment that looked suspiciously military-grade for exterminators. "What the hell?" One of Knox's men burst through the door, his face pale with confusion. "Sir, there are exterminators downstairs. They say there's been a severe infestation reported in the building. They need to fumigate immediately." "Exterminators?" Knox's voice cracked slightly. Through the window, Zara could see more pest control vehicles arriving. The workers moved with military precision, setting up what looked like fumigation equipment but with modifications that suggested an entirely different purpose. Knox's phone rang, and he answered it with shaking hands. "What do you mean they have permits? What kind of permits?" Zara couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Knox's expression grew increasingly frantic. "Emergency health order?" "That's impossible, He stopped, listening, then his face went white. "What do you mean the building's been quarantined?" Through her earpiece, Damien's voice was calmly efficient. "Team Alpha, secure the stairwells. Team Beta, elevators. I want every exit controlled but make it look like standard fumigation protocol." Knox slammed down the phone and whirled to face his remaining men. "Get her out of here. Now. Use the service elevator." "I'm afraid that won't be possible." The voice came from the hallway, and moments later Vincent appeared in the doorway, dressed in pest control coveralls and carrying what looked like a fumigation tank. "Building's under quarantine order. No one in or out until we've eliminated the infestation." Behind him, two more exterminators appeared, their gear suspiciously bulky and their movements too coordinated for civilian workers. Knox pulled out a gun, his mask of sophistication finally slipping completely. "I don't care what permits you have. This is a private suite." "Sir," Vincent said politely, "I'm going to have to ask you to cooperate with the fumigation process. For everyone's safety." One of Knox's men reached for his own weapon, but the exterminators were faster. In seconds, the room was filled with men in coveralls, their equipment making soft hissing sounds that reminded Zara uncomfortably of actual fumigation. "Sleep gas," Vincent explained conversationally as Knox's men began swaying on their feet. Much more civilized than traditional methods. Knox himself was still standing, though he looked increasingly unsteady. "This isn't over," he slurred. "Celeste. Celeste has plans." "I'm sure she does," Vincent replied. "Mr. Cross is looking forward to discussing them with her." As Knox collapsed, Zara felt strong arms around her, steadying her as the sleep gas dissipated. She looked up to find Damien himself, dressed in coveralls but unmistakably himself, amber eyes blazing with a mixture of relief and barely controlled violence. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her frantically, checking for injuries. "I'm fine." But as she said it, she realized she was shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her unsteady and overwhelmed. "Vincent, status report," Damien said, never taking his eyes off her. "Building secured. Knox's team neutralized. We're sweeping for additional threats now." "And Celeste's people?" "Elena's handling them. Turns out the sanctuary women have some interesting skills when properly motivated." Damien's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "I should have expected that." As they moved through the building, Zara was struck by the efficiency of the operation. What had looked like a simple fumigation from the outside was revealed to be a complex military-style extraction. The pest control workers moved with the precision of special forces, their equipment modified for purposes far beyond eliminating insects. "How many people do you have?" she asked as they reached the lobby. "Enough," Damien replied. "More than Knox expected, fewer than I would have liked." Outside, the street looked like a scene from a disaster movie. Police barriers had been erected, keeping curious onlookers at bay while the fumigation continued. Official-looking people with clipboards and badges moved purposefully around, maintaining the illusion that this was a legitimate health emergency. "The permits, the quarantine order, how did you arrange all that so quickly?" "I told you I had connections." Damien helped her into a black SUV that had appeared at the curb. "Money talks. Fear talks louder. And the promise of favors owed talks loudest of all." As they drove through the city, Zara found herself studying Damien's profile. This wasn't the polished businessman who'd sat next to her on a plane, or even the protective alpha who'd offered her sanctuary. This was someone else entirely, someone with the resources and ruthlessness to mobilize private armies and government agencies alike. "Who are you really?" she asked quietly. "Someone who protects what's his," he replied, his hand finding hers. "Someone who learned a long time ago that playing by the rules only works when everyone else is playing the same game." The SUV pulled up to his building, and they rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. But as soon as the doors opened, Zara heard a familiar sound that made her heart clench. Arya was crying. They found her in the living room with Dr. Hayes, who looked harried and apologetic. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "She's been inconsolable since you left. Nothing I try seems to help." Zara reached for her daughter, but Arya's cries only intensified when she saw her mother. It wasn't until Damien approached that the baby's wails began to subside. "There's my girl," he murmured, lifting Arya into his arms. "Did you miss us?" Arya immediately stopped crying, but instead of settling against his chest as usual, she grabbed for something at his wrist. His watch, an expensive piece that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Dada," she said clearly, tugging at the watch band. "Dada." Dr. Hayes blinked in surprise. "That's new. She's been saying that word all day, but only when she sees his picture or something that belongs to him." Zara felt her world shift slightly. Arya had never called anyone Dada before. The fact that she'd chosen Damien, that she associated him with comfort and security, spoke to something deeper than simple familiarity. "She wants your watch," Zara observed, still processing the implications. "She can have it." Damien unfastened the expensive timepiece without hesitation, handing it to Arya, who immediately tried to put it in her mouth. "Everything I have is hers anyway." The casual way he said it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, made Zara's chest tight with emotion. "Sir?" Vincent appeared in the doorway. "We have the initial reports from the sanctuary." "How bad?" "Not as bad as it could have been. Celeste's people tried to move on the facility, but..." Vincent's expression was carefully neutral. "Elena and the others were ready for them." "Ready how?" "It turns out several of our residents have backgrounds in military and law enforcement." When Elena explained the situation, they organized a response. Vincent paused. There may have been some creative interpretations of self-defense. Damien's laugh was genuinely amused. "Remind me to give Elena a raise." "There's something else, sir. Something you need to know about the baby." Vincent's expression grew serious. "We ran DNA tests when Knox first showed up with his forged documents. The results came back today." Zara felt her blood chill. "What kind of results?" "Arya isn't just any abandoned baby," Vincent said gently. "She's the daughter of Catherine Morrison, the Omega who was killed in Oakland 2 years ago." The name hit Damien like a physical blow. "Catherine? But that's impossible. She didn't have any children. She was pregnant when she was taken. The child was born in captivity, then abandoned when Catherine was murdered." Vincent's voice was carefully controlled. "Someone found her and kept her safe until I found her," Zara whispered, the pieces falling into place. "She was at the safe house when I got there. The other women said someone had left her with a note saying to keep her safe. That someone was probably Catherine herself," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "She must have known she wasn't going to survive. She made sure her daughter was protected." Zara looked down at Arya, who was still contentedly chewing on Damien's watch. "She's Anna's, she's your sister's friend. The one Knox's people killed." "The one I failed to save," Damien said, his voice rough with old grief and new understanding. "The one I promised Anna I'd protect." The guilt in his voice broke something open in Zara's chest. She understood now why he'd been so protective, so desperate to keep them safe. It wasn't just about her, or even about his growing feelings. It was about redemption, about keeping a promise to his dead sister. "She's safe now," Zara said softly. "Catherine's daughter is safe. Because of you. Because of you, he corrected. You're the one who found her, who've been protecting her all this time. And because of both of you, Dr. Hayes added, she's got a family now. People who love her. The word hung in the air between them, love. It was the first time anyone had said it explicitly, and Zara felt the truth of it settle into her bones. Whatever had started as protection and circumstance had become something deeper, more permanent. Arya chose that moment to look up at Damien and clearly say, Dada, before returning to her determined destruction of his expensive watch. I should probably get her a proper teething toy, Damien said, but he made no move to take the watch away. She likes expensive things, Zara observed. Wonder where she gets that from. Clearly from her excellent taste in surrogate fathers, he replied, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him sharply. Damien. We need to talk, he said quietly. About what happens now. About what you want. What we all want. Before she could respond, Vincent cleared his throat diplomatically. Sir, there's one more thing. Knox is awake and asking to make a deal. He claims to have information about Celeste's broader network. Damien's expression hardened. Does he now? Should I tell him you're not interested? Tell him I'll consider his offer. Damien's smile was sharp as a blade. After I've had time to properly motivate him. The casual way he spoke about intimidation should have frightened Zara. Instead, she found herself thinking about Knox's plans to sell her, about the other women who'd disappeared, about Catherine Morrison dying alone and afraid while trying to protect her baby. I want to be there, she said suddenly. Absolutely not. He targeted me, Damien. He was going to sell me tonight. I have a right. You have a right to be safe, he interrupted. To never have to see that bastard again. I have a right to choose, she corrected firmly. And I choose to face him. Something in her tone must have gotten through to him, because his expression shifted from protective to considering. Together, he asked finally. Together. Then together it is. He stood, still holding Arya, who had managed to get the watch band wrapped around her tiny wrist like an oversized bracelet. But first, we finish that conversation we keep starting. What conversation? The one where we figure out what this is between us. What it means. What we want it to become. His amber eyes held hers steadily. Because whatever happens with Knox and Celeste, whatever comes next, I need to know where we stand. Zara felt her heart race, understanding that this was the moment, the choice between safety and uncertainty, between the known cage and the unknown freedom. But as she looked at Damien holding Arya, saw the love and protectiveness and desperate hope in his expression, she realized the choice had already been made. Had been made the moment she'd fallen asleep on his shoulder on that plane, trusting a stranger to keep her safe. We stand together, she said simply. All three of us. His smile was brilliant, transformative, and she saw clearly the man beneath the power and control, someone who'd been as lost as she was, who'd found in her and Arya the family he'd never known he needed. Dada, Arya said again, as if sealing the decision, and reached for Zara with her free hand. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Zara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Even if where she belonged was at the center of a territorial war between two dangerous men, surrounded by mysteries and violence and complications she was only beginning to understand. Some battles, she was learning, were worth fighting. Some territories were worth claiming. And some families were worth everything. Chapter 7. The Werewolf Council chambers were nothing like Zara had expected. Instead of the Gothic grandeur she'd imagined, the building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel that reflected the Portland skyline. Inside, the hearing room resembled a corporate boardroom more than a courtroom, with polished marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the late afternoon light. But despite the civilized veneer, the tension in the air was unmistakably predatory. Are you sure about this? Damien asked quietly as they waited in the hallway outside. He was immaculate as always in a charcoal suit, but Zara could see the strain around his eyes, smell the carefully controlled aggression rolling off him in waves. I'm sure. She adjusted Arya in her arms, grateful for the baby's warm weight. They decided to bring her as evidence, living proof of the trafficking ring's victims. Knox's testimony won't be enough. They need to hear from someone who was actually targeted. The moment you mention your abilities. I know. She met his gaze steadily. But it's the only way to expose Celeste's corruption. We both know that. Vincent appeared at Damien's elbow, his expression grim. Sir, we have a problem. The council roster has changed since yesterday. 3 of our allied members have been replaced with emergency appointees. Celeste's people? Almost certainly. And there's more. Vincent lowered his voice. Knox's legal team arrived an hour ago. They're claiming this isn't about trafficking, it's about your illegal expansion into another pack's territory and unlawful imprisonment of rescued Omegas. Damien's jaw tightened. They're turning this around on us. It gets worse. They've subpoenaed records from the sanctuary, financial documents, even surveillance footage from your building. They're painting you as a vigilante who operates outside werewolf law. Because I do, Damien said simply. The question is whether the council cares more about legal technicalities or stopping trafficking. Before Vincent could respond, the chamber doors opened and a stern-faced woman in official robes gestured for them to enter. The Council of Portland Territorial Authority will now hear the matter of Ravencroft versus Cross, she announced. All parties will present evidence in an orderly fashion. As they filed into the chamber, Zara got her first look at the council members. 7 werewolves sat behind a curved desk, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. At the far end of the room, Celeste Ravencroft sat with her legal team, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her sharp cheekbones and cold blue eyes. She was beautiful in the way that expensive things were beautiful, perfect, polished, and utterly without warmth. Mr. Cross, the council chairwoman said, you stand accused of operating an illegal sanctuary without proper territorial permits, harboring fugitive Omegas, and interfering with legitimate pack business. How do you plead? Not guilty, Damien replied calmly. And I submit that this hearing is a sham designed to protect trafficking operations. A murmur went through the gallery, but the chairwoman's expression didn't change. You'll have your chance to present evidence. Ms. Ravencroft, please proceed with your opening statement. Celeste rose gracefully, every inch the successful businesswoman. Thank you, Chairwoman Phillips. Members of the council, we're here today because Mr. Cross has systematically violated werewolf law in pursuit of his personal vendetta against legitimate business operations. Legitimate? Damien's voice cracked like a whip. You call selling Omegas to the highest bidder legitimate? Mr. Cross, Chairwoman Phillips warned, you'll have your turn to speak. Celeste's smile was razor-sharp. As I was saying, Mr. Cross has used his wealth and influence to operate outside legal channels. He's harbored fugitive Omegas, prevented lawful mates from reclaiming their partners, and built an illegal territorial expansion disguised as charity work. She gestured to a stack of documents on her table. We have evidence that Mr. Cross has systematically eliminated business competitors through intimidation and illegal surveillance. He's created a private army that operates with impunity, terrorizing law-abiding citizens who dare to oppose him. Those law-abiding citizens, Damien said quietly, include traffickers, rapists, and murderers. Alleged traffickers, Celeste corrected smoothly. And that, members of the council, is exactly the problem. Mr. Cross has appointed himself judge, jury, and executioner. He decides who deserves protection and who deserves destruction, all while hiding behind the facade of rescue work. She moved closer to the council table, her voice taking on a persuasive cadence. I'm not saying his intentions weren't originally good. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mr. Cross has become exactly the kind of dangerous vigilante our laws were designed to prevent. Zara watched the council members' faces, using her ability to read their sense. 3 of them, the emergency appointees, she realized, were listening to Celeste with approval that smelled genuine. The others seemed more conflicted, but she caught the sharp scent of fear from 2 of them. Celeste had leverage over them somehow. Furthermore, Celeste continued, we have evidence that Mr. Cross has been holding Omegas against their will, including the complainant in this case. Ms. Zara Black was lawfully mated to Alpha Knox Patterson, but Mr. Cross has prevented her from returning to her rightful mate. That's a lie, Zara said before she could stop herself. Ms. Black, Chairwoman Phillips said sharply, you're not recognized to speak at this time. But I am the subject of this hearing, Zara replied, standing despite Damien's restraining hand on her arm. Don't I have the right to defend myself against false accusations? You'll have your chance during testimony, the chairwoman said. Please be seated. As Zara sat back down, Arya chose that moment to start fussing. The baby had been remarkably well behaved during the proceedings, but the tension in the room was clearly affecting her. It's okay, sweetheart, Zara murmured, bouncing her gently. But Arya's whimpers were quickly escalating to full-blown cries that echoed off the marble walls. Perhaps, Celeste said with mock concern, the child should be removed. This is hardly an appropriate environment for an infant. The child stays, Damien said firmly. She's evidence. Evidence of what? That you've manipulated a vulnerable Omega into believing you care about her welfare? Celeste's voice carried clearly over Arya's cries. Members of the council, I submit that Mr. Cross's obsession with Ms. Black proves exactly how dangerous he's become. Arya's cries were getting louder, drawing disapproving looks from the gallery. Zara tried everything, rocking, shushing, even offering a bottle, but nothing worked. The baby was inconsolable, and the sound was clearly disrupting the proceedings. Then Damien stood and loosened his tie. What are you doing? Zara asked. Something that works. He slipped the silk tie from around his neck and handed it to Arya, who immediately stopped crying and grabbed for it with both hands. The sudden silence was almost shocking. Arya settled against Zara's chest, contentedly chewing on Damien's expensive tie, her crisis completely forgotten. Well, Chairwoman Phillips said dryly, that's certainly effective. She likes expensive things, Damien said with a slight smile. I'm encouraging her excellent taste. A few chuckles rippled through the gallery, and even some of the council members looked amused. But Celeste's expression had darkened considerably. As I was saying, she continued, clearly flustered by the interruption, Mr. Cross's behavior demonstrates a pattern of obsession and control that. Actually, Damien interrupted, I'd like to address that accusation directly. Mr. Cross, you're not. Yes, I'm obsessed with her. His voice carried clearly through the chamber, stopping Celeste mid-sentence. Yes, I've tracked her movements, manipulated her circumstances, and eliminated her other options. I've done everything Ms. Ravencroft accuses me of and more. The admission sent a shock through the room. Zara felt her breath catch, unsure whether to be terrified or aroused by his public declaration. But, Damien continued, his amber eyes never leaving Zara's face, I did it because she belongs with me. Because the moment I caught her scent, I knew I'd do anything to protect her. Because she and that baby are the most important things in my world, and I'd burn this entire city down before I'd let anyone hurt them. Mr. Cross, Chairwoman Phillips said sharply, are you confessing to the charges against you? I'm confessing to loving her. He turned to face the council, and Zara saw something raw and honest in his expression. I'm confessing to being territorial and possessive and probably more than a little unhinged when it comes to her safety. And yes, if I had to do it all again, I'd make the same choices. Celeste's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. Thank you, Mr. Cross. You've just proven my point better than I ever could. Have I? Damien's smile was dangerous. Or have I proven that a man will do anything to protect the woman he loves? Something any alpha in this room would understand. Protection? Celeste's voice rose. You call kidnapping protection? You call manipulation and control protection? I call results protection, Damien replied calmly. Ms. Black is alive, safe, and free to make her own choices. Unlike the dozen women Knox Patterson trafficked in the past year. Alleged trafficking, Celeste snapped. Would you like to hear the recordings? Vincent stepped forward with a tablet. We have hours of Knox Patterson discussing his operation, including specific details about buyers and victims. Celeste's composure cracked slightly. Those recordings were obtained illegally. Were they? Damien's smile widened. Ms. Black was wearing a wire with her full knowledge and consent. Everything Knox said was recorded with at least one party's permission, making it perfectly legal. The point is, Celeste said, struggling to regain control of the narrative, Mr. Cross operates outside the law. He's built a private kingdom where he decides who lives and dies, who stays and goes. That's not protection, that's tyranny. Then let's ask the person in question. Chairwoman Phillips looked directly at Zara. Ms. Black, are you here of your own free will? Zara stood slowly, Arya still contentedly chewing on Damien's tie. This was it, the moment where she'd have to decide not just her own fate, but Damien's as well. That's a complicated question, she said finally. Mr. Cross did manipulate circumstances to bring me to Portland. He did eliminate other options. He has been controlling and possessive. Celeste's smile was triumphant. But, Zara continued, he also saved my life. He's given me and my daughter a safe place to live, people who care about us, and the resources to fight back against the people who wanted to hurt us. So yes, I'm here of my own free will. Because this is where I choose to be. Even knowing what he's done? Chairwoman Phillips pressed. The manipulation, the control? Especially knowing what he's done. Zara met Damien's gaze across the room. Because he did all of it to protect me, not to use me. There's a difference. How can you be sure? Celeste demanded. How do you know he's not simply a more sophisticated predator? Because, Zara said quietly, I can smell lies. It's a rare ability among Omegas, but I've had it since childhood. And Damien Cross has never lied to me. Not once. The admission sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. Several council members leaned forward, suddenly very interested. You can detect deception? Chairwoman Phillips asked. Yes. And I can tell you that everything Knox Patterson claimed about being my mate was false. I can tell you that Alpha Morrison on the council there, she pointed to one of the emergency appointees, is lying when he claims to be impartial. I can smell the fear on him, the guilt. Someone has something on him. Morrison's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? Zara turned to face Celeste. I can also tell you that Ms. Ravencroft's entire testimony has been carefully crafted truths designed to mislead. She's not lying outright, she's too smart for that. But she's manipulating facts to serve her agenda. Celeste's composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. You can't base legal proceedings on some supposed supernatural ability. Can't we? Another council member, one of the original appointees, spoke up. If Ms. Black can truly detect deception, then perhaps we should hear what else she has to say. Thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. Zara took a deep breath, knowing this was her moment. Knox Patterson isn't just a trafficker, he's part of a network that spans multiple states. Celeste Ravencroft has been funding his operations in exchange for information about Damien's sanctuary. She's also been blackmailing council members to ensure favorable rulings. That's enough. Celeste stood abruptly. I won't listen to these wild accusations. Councilman Morrison, Zara continued relentlessly, has been taking bribes from Ravencroft Industries. Councilwoman Davis has gambling debts that Celeste paid off in exchange for her vote. And Councilman Harper, she turned to the third emergency appointee, has been embezzling from the territorial fund. Celeste found out and has been using it as leverage. The chamber erupted in chaos. The accused council members were shouting denials, Celeste was demanding order, and the gallery was buzzing with shocked whispers. Silence. Chairwoman Phillips slammed her gavel repeatedly. Order. I will have order. When the noise finally died down, she turned to Zara with a mixture of respect and wariness. Ms. Black, these are serious accusations. Are you prepared to stake your reputation on their accuracy? I am. Zara's voice was steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. And I can prove it. How? Ask them direct questions. Ask Celeste direct questions. I'll tell you immediately if they're lying. She looked around the chamber, meeting each hostile gaze without flinching. Unless, of course, some members of this council would prefer not to know the truth. Celeste's laugh was brittle, desperate. This is insane. You're going to base legal proceedings on the word of an unstable Omega who's clearly been brainwashed by her captor? I'm not brainwashed, Zara said calmly. I'm in love. There's a difference. The admission hung in the air like a challenge. She hadn't meant to say it so bluntly, but now that the words were out, she felt a strange sense of relief. And yes, she continued, looking directly at Damien, his methods were questionable. His control issues are real. But his feelings are genuine. I can smell emotions as well as lies, and everything Damien Cross feels for me and my daughter is absolutely real. Damien's expression transformed, the carefully controlled mask dropping away to reveal something raw and vulnerable and completely honest. The question, Zara said, turning back to the council, is whether you're more interested in punishing someone for loving too much, or stopping the people who profit from misery and death. Chairwoman Phillips was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces around the room. Finally, she spoke. Councilman Morrison, did you accept bribes from Ravencroft Industries? Morrison's face was gray as ash. I refuse to answer on the grounds. He's lying, Zara said simply. The question makes him afraid, guilty, and desperate. Councilwoman Davis? This is outrageous, Davis sputtered. I won't be subjected to this witch trial. Also lying, Zara said. Fear and guilt, plus anger at being exposed. One by one, the corrupt council members' lies unraveled under Zara's inexorable ability to detect deception. Celeste's carefully constructed web of influence crumbled as her bought votes were exposed and removed from the chamber. When it was over, only 4 council members remained, and their verdict was unanimous. The charges against Damien Cross are dismissed, Chairwoman Phillips announced. Furthermore, this council calls for a full investigation into the trafficking allegations against Knox Patterson and his associates. Ms. Ravencroft, you're hereby banned from council proceedings pending investigation into your own involvement. As the gavel fell, Zara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. It was done. They'd won. But as she looked around the chamber, at Celeste's furious face, at the chaos of reporters and officials, at the magnitude of what they'd exposed, she realized this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. Because now the whole werewolf world knew what she could do. And there would be others, people with their own agendas and their own uses for an Omega who could detect any lie. She looked at Damien, who was watching her with an expression of fierce pride and protective fury, and knew that whatever came next, they'd face it together. All 3 of them. Even if the whole world wanted to tear them apart. Chapter 8. 3 months later, Zara stood in what had once been Damien's sterile penthouse and marveled at how much had changed. The space was still elegant, still expensive, but now it actually looked lived in. Aria's toys were scattered across the Italian leather furniture, family photos covered the sleek surfaces, and the scent of home-cooked breakfast lingered in the air. Vincent's here, Damien called from the kitchen, where he was attempting to negotiate with Aria over her refusal to eat anything that wasn't shaped like dinosaurs. The paperwork is ready for your signature. Zara joined them, smiling at the sight of Damien in a $1,000 suit with pureed sweet potato on his sleeve. Aria had developed very specific opinions about food presentation, and she wasn't shy about expressing them. What paperwork? She asked, accepting the coffee he handed her. The official documents making you co-director of the Portland Omega Sanctuary. His smile was proud, possessive, and just a little smug. Congratulations, you're now legally in charge of a multi-million-dollar operation. I'm what? The coffee mug nearly slipped from her hands. Damien, I never agreed to. You agreed to be my partner in this, he reminded her, his voice taking on that reasonable tone that meant he'd already made decisions without consulting her. The sanctuary needs official leadership, and you're the obvious choice. She felt her temper flare, a familiar response to his high-handed methods. But before she could launch into a lecture about making unilateral decisions, Vincent cleared his throat diplomatically. Actually, Ms. Black, Mr. Cross tried to put your name on the documents weeks ago. I'm the one who insisted we wait for your explicit consent. Vincent's expression was carefully neutral, but she caught the hint of amusement in his scent. He may have mentioned something about wanting to surprise you. I don't like surprises, Zara said pointedly, shooting Damien a look that made him shift uncomfortably. I'm learning that, he replied. Which is why I had Vincent prepare 2 sets of documents. One making you co-director, and one making you director with me as silent partner. Your choice. The gesture was small, but significant. 3 months ago, he would have simply presented her with the fait accompli and expected her to be grateful. Now, at least, he was offering options. Co-director, she decided. But I want veto power over any major decisions. Done. He leaned over to kiss her temple, a casual gesture that still sent heat spiraling through her. Elena's already prepared the transition plan. She's excited to work with you officially. As Vincent laid out the documents, Arya decided she was done with breakfast and reached for Damien's tie, her new favorite accessory. He'd started buying them in bulk after she destroyed 3 of his favorites with enthusiastic teething. Dada, she said clearly, tugging on the silk. Up. Damien immediately lifted her from her high chair, seemingly unbothered by the sweet potato transfer to his pristine shirt. Watching him with Arya never failed to amaze Zara. This powerful, dangerous man turned to putty in the hands of a toddler. Speaking of the sanctuary, Vincent continued, we've had requests from Seattle, San Francisco, and Vancouver about establishing sister locations. Apparently, word of your unique services has spread. Unique services? Zara looked up from the documents. Your ability to verify victim testimony has been invaluable in prosecutions, Vincent explained. 3 major trafficking rings have been dismantled based on evidence you helped gather. The FBI is very interested in consulting with you. The FBI? Damien's voice went flat, dangerous. Absolutely not. Why not? Zara challenged, recognizing the protective instincts kicking in. It could help more victims. It could also paint a target on your back the size of Texas. His arm tightened around Arya, who was contentedly destroying his tie. Every criminal organization in the country would want you eliminated. And you think keeping me locked away is the solution? I think keeping you alive is the priority. They stared at each other across the kitchen island, the familiar tension of protection versus autonomy crackling between them. But before the argument could escalate, Arya piped up with perfect clarity. Dada, no spy on Mama. The words hung in the air, shocking in their precision. Vincent's eyebrows shot up, and Damien went very still. Did she just? Zara started. She's been saying things like that all week, Damien admitted reluctantly. Yesterday it was, Dada, no hide cookies. The day before was, Dada, no lie about bedtime. She's inherited your ability, Vincent observed with scientific fascination. At 18 months, she's already detecting deception and calling it out. Zara felt a mixture of pride and concern. She's going to be a handful. She already is, Damien said, but his tone was fond. Last week she caught me reading your emails and gave me the most disapproving look I've ever seen. I actually felt guilty. You were reading my emails? Zara's voice rose dangerously. In my defense, it was a security check, he said quickly. There was a suspicious sender. Damien Cross, we talked about this. She moved around the island, backing him against the counter. What did our agreement say about respecting my privacy? That I would ask before monitoring your communications unless there was immediate danger, he recited dutifully. And was there immediate danger? I thought there might be, he said, then winced at Arya's disapproving babble. Okay, fine. I was being paranoid. And what's the consequence for violating our agreement? His expression shifted to something that was part resignation, part anticipation. I sleep on the couch for a week. That's right. She stood on her toes to kiss him briefly, feeling his surprise at the reward instead of punishment. But since you confessed without being asked, it's only 3 nights. Vincent cleared his throat. Should I come back later? This seems like a private negotiation. No, stay, Zara said, settling beside Damien. You might as well witness the formal amendments to our relationship contract. Relationship contract? Vincent's professional composure cracked slightly. You haven't told him about the contract? Zara asked Damien, who was looking distinctly uncomfortable. It's not that unusual, he muttered. Lots of couples have agreements about boundaries. Lots of couples don't have theirs printed on corporate letterhead with official seals, Zara replied, pulling out her phone to show Vincent. Article 3, subsection B. Party A agrees to limit surveillance activities to mutually agreed upon safety protocols, with violations subject to couch sleeping penalties. Vincent studied the document, his expression shifting from professional interest to barely concealed amusement. This is remarkably thorough. Party B acknowledges Party A's territorial nature and agrees to wearing tracking jewelry in exchange for advance notice of any hired investigators or background checks. My personal favorite is Section 5, Zara said, scrolling down. Party A will refrain from eliminating perceived threats without consultation unless said threats pose immediate physical danger, as determined by mutually agreed upon criteria. You had him agree to ask before making people disappear? Vincent's respect was evident. She has veto power over my protective instincts, Damien said, bouncing Arya gently. It's surprisingly effective. Because I understand why you do it, Zara said softly, her hand finding his free one. I just need to be part of the decision-making process. Most of the time, he corrected with a slight smile. Most of the time, she agreed. Emergency exceptions noted in Appendix C. Before Vincent could ask about Appendix C, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and straightened. Sir, Knox Patterson's sentencing hearing is in an hour. The prosecutor wants to know if you'll be attending. Damien's expression hardened. Yes. Both of us. Actually, Zara said thoughtfully, I think I'd rather skip this one. I've testified enough times. Let the legal system finish what we started. You're sure? Damien studied her face carefully. You don't want to see him sentenced? I want to see him forgotten, she replied honestly. He's already taken enough of our time and energy. I'd rather focus on the future. Something shifted in Damien's expression, relief, maybe, or admiration. In that case, Vincent can represent us at the hearing. We have more important things to do. Such as discussing the FBI consultation offer properly. He set Arya down in her playpen, where she immediately began arranging her toys with the serious concentration of a tiny executive. Without me making unilateral decisions about your safety. The gesture was small, but significant. 3 months ago, the discussion would have been over before it started, his word was law, end of story. Now, at least, he was willing to hear her out. I want to help, she said simply. But I also want to stay alive and keep our daughter safe. So let's figure out how to do both. Our daughter? The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Damien went very still. Is that how you see her? As ours? She looked at Arya, who was watching them with bright, intelligent eyes. Yes. I know Catherine was her birth mother, and I know you feel responsible for what happened to her. But Arya is ours now. We're her family. Yes, he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. We are. The moment stretched between them, weighted with everything they'd built together. Not just the passion and protectiveness, but the everyday reality of shared meals and midnight feedings and negotiating toddler tantrums. Mama. Dada. Arya's voice cut through the emotional tension as she held up a toy phone. No secrets. They both laughed, the spell broken but not dissipated. She's going to keep us honest, Zara observed. Terrifyingly so, Damien agreed. Yesterday she caught me hiding vegetables in her mac and cheese and gave me a lecture about no tricks. A lecture? She's 18 months old. She's very articulate for her age. And she has opinions about everything. He moved to pick up Arya, who immediately began patting his cheeks. Don't you, sweetheart? Dada's silly, Arya announced solemnly, which made Vincent snort with laughter. Even the baby thinks you're ridiculous, Zara said, grinning. The baby is obviously a genius, Damien replied with dignity. She gets that from both her parents. The casual way he said it, parents, plural, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, made Zara's heart do complicated things in her chest. So, Vincent said, clearly sensing the need for a topic change, about the expansion requests. Should I schedule meetings with the other cities? Yes, Zara said before Damien could object. But we visit them, not the other way around. I want to see their operations, meet their people, make sure we're not just franchising the sanctuary name to people who don't share our values. Agreed, Damien said, surprising her. Though we'll need serious security arrangements. Of course we will, she replied, rolling her eyes. You'll probably want to hire advanced teams and run background checks on everyone we meet. Already done for Seattle and San Francisco, he admitted. Vancouver is taking longer because of the international angle. She stared at him. You've been planning this expansion without telling me? I've been preparing for the possibility, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? But her tone was more amused than angry. She was learning to pick her battles with him, and this particular form of over-preparation was relatively harmless. Article 7 of our agreement specifically allows for contingency planning, he pointed out. I'm well within the established parameters. You memorized our relationship contract. I wrote most of it, he replied with a slight smile. Of course I memorized it. Vincent looked between them with fascination. This is either the healthiest dysfunctional relationship I've ever seen, or the most dysfunctional healthy relationship. Both, they said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. It works for us, Zara added. He gets to be obsessively protective, I get to set boundaries about how that protection manifests, and we both get what we need. What do you need? Vincent asked, genuinely curious. Security, she replied without hesitation. The knowledge that someone will move heaven and earth to keep me and Arya safe. The feeling of being precious to someone. And you? Vincent turned to Damien. Her, Damien said simply, his eyes on Zara's face. Her strength, her intelligence, her ability to call me on my shit and love me anyway. The knowledge that she chooses to stay, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Even though you're impossible? Zara teased. Especially because I'm impossible, he replied seriously. Anyone can love someone easy. It takes something special to love someone complicated. The words hung in the air between them, a declaration and a promise all at once. Speaking of complicated, Vincent said diplomatically, should I book 3 seats or 4 for the Seattle trip? 4, Zara said firmly. We're not leaving Arya with babysitters. Even highly trained, background checked, former military babysitters? Damien asked hopefully. Especially those, she replied. She goes where we go. The baby will love flying, Vincent observed. She seems to enjoy travel. She likes adventure, Damien agreed, tickling Arya until she giggled. Just like her parents. Parents, Zara repeated, trying out the word. I like how that sounds. Good, Damien said, leaning over to kiss her properly. Because we're in this together now. All of us. For the long haul. How long? She asked against his lips. Forever, he replied without hesitation. If you'll have me. Forever's a long time, she pointed out. Not long enough, he said, and she could smell the absolute truth of it in his scent. 6 weeks later, they were on a plane again, not the commercial flight where they'd first met, but Damien's private jet, luxuriously appointed and baby-proofed within an inch of its life. Zara was reading over Damien's shoulder as he scrolled through security reports on his tablet, a habit that had become second nature. She'd learned that if she didn't keep track of his monitoring activities, he'd spiral into increasingly elaborate protective measures. 6 surveillance teams for a simple site visit? She asked, noting the details on the screen. Don't you think that's a bit excessive? The Vancouver operation is new, he replied, not even trying to hide what he was doing anymore. I want to be thorough. You want to be paranoid, she corrected fondly. But I suppose that's why I love you. Arya was strapped into a car seat between them, wearing a onesie that declared, Future CEO, in glittery letters. Zara had countered with tiny jeans that proclaimed, Future Feminist, in equally bold script. Their daughter was going to grow up knowing she could be anything she wanted, even if that meant being both. Mama, Arya said sleepily, holding up her current favorite toy, a plush dragon that Damien had given her. Dada happy? Very happy, Zara confirmed, looking at the man who'd turned her world upside down and somehow made it better. We're all happy. Good, Arya declared with a satisfied nod, then promptly fell asleep clutching her dragon. She's going to rule the world someday, Damien observed quietly. Probably, Zara agreed. God help us all. God help anyone who tries to stop her, he corrected, and there was something fierce and proud in his voice that made Zara's heart clench with love. She looked around the cabin, at their sleeping daughter, at the man who'd moved mountains to protect them, at the life they'd built from chaos and desperation and stubborn love. It wasn't perfect. Damien was still impossibly controlling, she was still learning to trust, and they were both probably a little crazy. But it was theirs. This complicated, passionate, sometimes dysfunctional family that had chosen each other despite everything. No regrets? Damien asked softly, as if reading her thoughts. None, she replied honestly. You? Only that it took so long to find you, he said, his hand covering hers. But I'd do it all again. Every manipulative, controlling, obsessive thing I did to get you here. I know, she said, bringing their joined hands to her lips. That's what makes it work. And as the plane carried them toward their next adventure, Zara reflected that sometimes the best love stories weren't about perfect people finding each other. Sometimes they were about imperfect people choosing each other, again and again, despite their flaws and because of their strengths. Sometimes they were about building something beautiful from broken pieces. Sometimes they were about 3 people on a plane, heading toward an uncertain future, but facing it together. And sometimes, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Epilogue, 3 years later. The Portland Omega Sanctuary's annual fundraising gala was in full swing, the converted ballroom filled with the city's elite, government officials, and most importantly, the survivors whose lives had been transformed by the program. Zara stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Damien work the room with his usual combination of charm and barely contained menace, and marveled at how much their world had changed. Mama, look. 3-year-old Arya tugged on Zara's emerald green dress, pointing toward the stage where Elena was delivering the evening's keynote address. Abuela Elena is talking. She is, Zara agreed, smiling at her daughter's excitement. Arya had adopted Elena as a grandmother figure, and the older woman had embraced the role with enthusiasm. What do you think she's saying? She's happy, Arya replied with the certainty that came from her inherited ability to read emotions and intentions. And proud. And a little nervous about the big people watching. At 3, Arya's gifts had developed far beyond simple lie detection. She could sense the emotional undercurrents in any room, often providing commentary that was both hilarious and unervingly accurate. Last week, she'd informed the mailman that he was sad about his doggie, with such genuine concern that the man had spent 20 minutes telling her about his elderly retriever's health problems. The Portland Omega Sanctuary has rescued and relocated over 300 women and children in the past 3 years, Elena was saying from the podium. But more than that, we've created a model that's been replicated in 12 cities across North America. We've proven that with the right resources and the right leadership, we can break the cycle of trafficking and abuse. Applause rippled through the crowd, and Zara felt a familiar surge of pride. The expansion had been even more successful than they'd hoped. Seattle, San Francisco, and Vancouver were thriving under local leadership, and newer locations in Denver, Phoenix, and Atlanta were already showing promising results. Mama, Arya whispered conspiratorially. Dada is doing his scary face at the man by the windows. Zara followed her daughter's gaze and spotted Damien in conversation with a distinguished-looking man she didn't recognize. Sure enough, Damien's expression had shifted into what Arya called his scary face, the politely menacing look that meant someone had said something he didn't appreciate. Should we rescue him? Zara asked. Yes, Arya said decisively. He needs help with people words. They made their way through the crowd, stopping frequently for Zara to greet supporters and survivors. The gala had become an annual tradition, not just for fundraising but for celebration, a chance for the women they'd helped to show the world how far they'd come. Mr. Cross, the stranger was saying as they approached, I still think you're missing a tremendous opportunity. The government applications for Ms. Black's abilities are not for sale, Damien finished coolly. As I've mentioned several times. Dada. Arya launched herself at Damien's legs, effectively ending the conversation. The man is making you grumpy. He certainly is, Damien agreed, scooping her up. Agent Morrison, I believe you've met my family. Agent Morrison, not to be confused with the disgraced former councilman, nodded politely. Ms. Black, always a pleasure. The Bureau's offer still stands if you change your mind about consulting work. And my answer remains the same, Zara replied pleasantly. I'm quite happy with our current arrangement. The truth was, she did occasionally consult for law enforcement, but strictly on her own terms. Cases involving trafficking or missing children, situations where her abilities could make a real difference. Never the interrogations or intelligence work the FBI really wanted, and always with Damien's extensive security measures in place. The man has boring thoughts, Arya announced after studying Agent Morrison with the serious concentration she brought to reading people. He thinks about papers and rules and not about helping people. Morrison's eyebrows rose. She really can? She can, Zara confirmed. And she's usually right. After the agent excused himself, they made their way to the family section, where Vincent was holding court with several of the sanctuary's success stories. He'd transitioned from head of security to operations manager, overseeing the day-to-day running of all 12 locations with the same meticulous attention to detail he'd once applied to protecting Damien. Sir, ma'am, he greeted them formally, though his smile was warm. The evening's going well. We're already at 150% of our fundraising goal. Excellent, Damien said, settling Arya on his hip. Any problems I should know about? Nothing significant. Although. Vincent's expression grew amused. Dr. Hayes has received 3 marriage proposals from donors who were impressed by her presentation on trauma recovery. Dr. Rebecca Hayes had become the sanctuary's chief medical officer, developing protocols for treating trafficking survivors that were now used nationwide. She'd also become like an aunt to Arya, who adored her gentle manner and endless patience with toddler questions about how bodies worked. Poor Rebecca, Zara laughed. She came here to help victims, not fend off admirers. Uncle Vincent, Arya said suddenly, fixing him with an intense stare. You're hiding something happy. Vincent's composure cracked slightly. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. You do, Arya insisted. It smells like secrets and flowers and being nervous excited. Arya, Zara warned gently, remember what we talked about privacy? But Damien was studying Vincent with new interest. Secrets and flowers? Vincent, are you? I may have been seeing someone, Vincent admitted reluctantly. Dr. Hayes and I have been spending time together outside of work. Vincent. Zara clapped her hands together. That's wonderful. How long has this been going on? 6 months, he replied, his professional facade completely abandoned. We've been keeping it quiet because of the workplace policy. What workplace policy? Damien interrupted. I never instituted a policy against staff relationships. Well, no, but I assumed. You assumed wrong. Dr. Hayes is a valued member of our team, and if she makes you happy, then I'm happy. Damien's smile was genuine. Besides, Arya clearly approves. She has good doctor hands, Arya said solemnly. And she likes Uncle Vincent's funny jokes. The conversation was interrupted by Elena's voice over the microphone. I'd like to invite some special guests to join me on stage. Our co-directors, Damian Cross and Zara Black, along with their family. That's our cue, Zara said, smoothing Aria's party dress, a miniature version of her own emerald gown that Damian had insisted on commissioning from the same designer. As they made their way to the stage, Zara caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Sarah, the young mother they'd met in the sanctuary's early days, now worked as a counselor in the Seattle location. Her son was healthy and happy, starting preschool in the fall. Councilwoman Phillips had become one of their strongest advocates, helping to push through legislation that strengthened anti-trafficking laws. Even some of the men from Damian's pest control team were present with their families, their children playing together in the designated family area. 3 years ago, Zara began when they reached the microphone. I was a scared Omega running from people who wanted to hurt me and my daughter. Tonight, I stand before you as the co-director of an organization that has helped hundreds of women and children find safety, hope, and new beginnings. The work we do here isn't just about rescue, Damian added, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. It's about restoration. It's about proving that every person has value, that every life is worth saving, that every survivor has the strength to rebuild. It's about family, Elena interjected from beside them, her voice thick with emotion. The family we choose, the family we create, the family we become when we open our hearts to each other. Aria, not to be left out, leaned toward the microphone. And it's about helping people not be scared anymore. The crowd's laughter was warm, affectionate, and Zara felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came from overwhelming gratitude. All of this, had grown from that terrifying night on a plane when she'd trusted a stranger to keep her safe. As the applause died down, Elena continued with the evening's final announcements. Knox Patterson had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole. Celeste Ravencroft had received 15 years and was reportedly writing a tell-all book that no publisher would touch. The trafficking network they'd exposed had been completely dismantled, with over 50 arrests and hundreds of victims recovered. But perhaps most importantly, Elena concluded, we've proven that love is stronger than fear, that families can be formed in the most unexpected ways, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances. Later, after the guests had gone home and the ballroom was being cleaned up, the sanctuary family gathered in Damian's penthouse for their own private celebration. Dr. Hayes was there with Vincent, their obvious happiness making everyone smile. Several of the sanctuary staff had joined them, along with some of the long-term residents who'd become like extended family. Aria had changed into her pajamas but refused to go to bed, too excited by the evening's festivities. She was currently holding court in the living room, regaling the adults with her observations about the various guests. The lady in the sparkly dress was thinking about her cat, she announced. And the man with the funny beard was worried about his car getting scratched in the parking. Your daughter is going to be a formidable woman someday, Dr. Hayes observed to Zara. Her emotional intelligence is already off the charts. She gets that from her mother, Damian said, settling beside Zara on the couch. The ability to see through people's facades and understand what they really need. I think she gets the best of both of us, Zara replied, watching Aria demonstrate her latest dance moves to an appreciative audience. Your protective instincts and my ability to read people. God help the world when she's a teenager, Vincent muttered, which made everyone laugh. Speaking of the future, Elena said, producing a manila folder, I have some news about the documentary. 6 months ago, a filmmaker had approached them about creating a documentary about the sanctuary's work. After much discussion, and extensive background checks on the entire production team, they'd agreed to participate. It's been accepted into 3 major film festivals, Elena announced, including Sundance. The producers think it has a real chance at awards recognition. More importantly, Dr. Hayes added, it's already generating interest from other cities wanting to start their own programs. We've had inquiries from Canada, the UK, and Australia. The work is spreading, Damian said with satisfaction. Good. As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Zara found herself in the kitchen with Elena, cleaning up the remnants of their celebration. You look happy, Elena observed, handing Zara a dish to dry. I am happy, Zara replied honestly. It's still strange sometimes, how much my life has changed. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this. And Damien? How is he adjusting to domestic life? Zara laughed. He's still impossibly controlling and overprotective. Last week he hired a background investigation on Aria's new pediatrician because he didn't like the way the man shook hands. But he's also the most devoted father and partner I could have asked for. He's found his purpose, Elena said thoughtfully. Before you and Aria, he was driven by guilt and rage over Anna's death. Now he's driven by love and hope. It's made all the difference. From the living room came the sound of Damien reading Aria a bedtime story, his deep voice gentle as he navigated the adventures of a brave little mouse. The scene was so domestic, so peaceful, that it still sometimes took Zara's breath away. Mama! Aria called out. Story time. Coming, Zara replied, hanging up the dish towel. She found Damien in the nursery, no longer a guest room, but a proper little girl's bedroom filled with books and toys and artwork. Aria was in her bed, clutching her beloved dragon, while Damien sat beside her reading from a picture book about a princess who rescued herself. Your turn, he said, handing her the book as she settled on Aria's other side. Where were we? Zara asked, though she knew the story by heart. The princess is being brave, Aria said sleepily. Like Mama was. Like Mama is, Damien corrected gently. Every day. As Zara read the familiar words, she felt Damien's hand find hers over their daughter's small form. This quiet moment of family contentment, was worth every terrifying step that had brought them here. Mama? Aria's voice was drowsy as the story ended. Yes, sweetheart. Are we safe now? Forever and always? Zara met Damien's eyes over their daughter's head, seeing her own emotions reflected there. Love, determination, and an unshakable commitment to protecting this precious thing they'd built together. Yes, baby, she said softly. We're safe now. Forever and always. And as Aria drifted off to sleep between the two people who loved her most in the world, Zara knew it was true. Not because the world had become less dangerous, but because they'd become stronger. Not because there were no more threats, but because they faced them together. They were safe because they were family. They were safe because they were home. They were safe because sometimes, when you least expect it, love really can conquer all. Even if it takes a private jet, a fake pest control company, and a 3-year-old with supernatural truth detection abilities to make it happen. Some love stories, Zara reflected as she tucked the blankets around her sleeping daughter, were worth the wait. This one had been worth everything. The end. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and comment for more.